Ladies and gentlemen, following on our pre-budget panel, from our pre-budget panel, tonight I am hosting a conversation with our esteemed panelists on their thoughts on the 2017 and 2018 budget as it will be handed out tonight. Once again, to continue our discussions from last week, unfortunately, we will miss our last week's youth panelist, Kula, the young lawyer who has study commitments tonight, but please allow me to introduce the panel that is with me here tonight. First of all, my good friend, Professor Vijay Naidu, who is a widely published academic and expert from the University of the South Pacific. He is also a renowned social justice advocate. Ms. Lorraine Foster, to my right, who joined us on the initial panel, a professional accountant who has served in various senior capacities in regional organizations, and she is also a gender advocate. Joining us in the panel tonight is Dr. Sunil Kumar, to my far left, also a widely published economist from the University of the South Pacific. And lastly, but no means the least, Mr. Apenisa Yabaki, our inspirational youth rep, who is a young law student at the University of the South Pacific and an active young citizen. So there you go, ladies and gentlemen, the panelists for our panel discussion tonight. Now, whilst we are awaiting the live coverage from Parliament on the announcement of the budget tonight, I will start off by asking the panel on what their opinions and their expectations are on what could be in the contents of the announcement to be made for Fiji by the Minister for the Economy in terms of government expenditure and also the revenue measures that will cut across the whole of Fiji in terms of its effects and benefits and cost. So I'll hand the mic right now, first of all, to Professor Vijay Naidu, and I'll ask him for his initial comments. Vijay.
Thank you, Chair. I think generally the budget that the Minister will be handing down will be business as usual. I don't see anything remarkable happening. In sort of broad terms, there would be large amounts of expenditure towards infrastructure, roading particularly, but also to water supply, and then smaller amounts distributed in a number of areas relating to social welfare, youth and women, and perhaps again large amount being allocated to education and training. However, as I observed in our initial discussion, there are a number of areas that are worthy of reflection, and I'd like to be surprised by the Minister. These areas include, housing, as I mentioned. In Suva alone, more than 25% of the population actually live in informal housing. And if you took the Wakavanua, arrangement in the Suva-Nasori, Suva-Naua corridor, then we're looking at, 30-40% of the population. So there's a lot of work to be done there, and there's been some suggestion this will happen. But that's an issue that I'm looking forward to the Minister of Economy addressing. Notice that the Ministry of Youth and Sports is allocated 16 million. Now, if you look at how much is allocated to the formal educational system and how much is allocated to the youth ministry, there is a huge variation. And it is critical that for appropriate labor market training, that the Ministry of Youth actually is again given more resources so that it's able to address social protection relating to young people.
Thank you, Vijay. I noticed that Parliament has come on live at the moment, and the initial processes of Parliament before the reading of the budget. I now leave all of us, whether the audience in the world tonight and in Fiji, and the audience in the House and the panel. We will now join Parliament for this live commentary, and then, as I said before, we will interject as necessary in terms of if there were critical comments to be made by the panel on the announcement. So we go now live and direct to Parliament.
Secretary General. Communications from the Chair. I welcome all honourable members to this evening's special sitting for the delivery of the 2017-2018 budget, addressed by the Honourable Attorney General and Minister for Economy, Public Enterprise, Civil Service and Communications. I also would like to welcome all distinguished guests joining us in the gallery, the members of the Diplomatic Corps and international regional organizations, permanent secretaries, the Commander of the RFMF, the Commissioner of Police and members of the business fraternity, as well as those seated in both our committee rooms. I acknowledge those watching proceedings on television and the internet and listening to the radio. Budget address is one of the most important sittings of the parliamentary year, as it is the day when the government announces its intentions for revenue raising and expenditure for the upcoming year. The approval of finance and appropriation is a fundamental role of any legislature. Thank you for taking interest in your parliament. Secretary General.
First reading of the 2017-2018 Appropriation Bill 2017.
I now call on the Honourable Minister for Economy to move the first reading.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, pursuant to Standing Orders 99 and 81.4, subsection 1, I move that the 2017-2018 Appropriation Bill 2017 be now read the first time. Thank you.
Do we have a seconder?
Madam Speaker, I would to second the motion.
Please hand the 4 copies of the bill to the Secretary General. For the information of honourable members, as per parliamentary convention and tradition, the Business Committee has exercised its powers pursuant to Standing Orders 68.1 to exempt the National Budget Address this evening, and the Shadow Minister's response, which will be delivered on Monday, 10 July 2017, from the ordinary speaking time limitations. I now call upon the Minister for Economy to deliver the National Budget Address.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Honourable Prime Minister, Leader of the Opposition, with much pleasure and honour, I rise to present to Parliament and all Fijians the national budget for the 2017-2018 fiscal year. Madam Speaker, I do not wish to take up everyone's TV time. As you know, this is all about prime-time TV viewing, and I'm sure they're more keen to watch the prime-time television shows. So I will cover tonight, Madam Speaker, only the most significant new expenditures and changes in spending, revenue and policy, and those are of the most interest to the public. Some ministry budgets will not necessarily be mentioned in this address. This is not, of course, a reflection on the importance of those ministries or the value of their work. We will, however, Madam Speaker, distribute a series of fact sheets to the media and the public that gives specific details of the expenditure and revenue measures. These fact sheets, Madam Speaker, will be distributed next weekend in a packet in the Fiji Sun. As such, the budget details will also be published on our website at www.economy.gov.fj. We encourage members of the public to directly ask us questions on the budget, and you can send in written questions or queries to the email address at budgetconsultation@economy.gov.fj. We will also, Madam Speaker, be holding roadshows and making appearances on radio and television to inform and encourage our fellow Fijians to understand how their government is managing the economy and the programs that have been and are to be implemented. Madam Speaker, as a government, our focus has always been to empower Fijians, raise our productivity capacity and unlock our true potential. We have worked to make our nation more inclusive. We ensure that all Fijians share in our prosperity, to empower those on the margins of society, our youth, our women, disabled persons, senior citizens, and every Fijian. We believe, Madam Speaker, that economic empowerment is imperative, not just to uplift individuals and help them succeed. It is the way to build a vigorous economy and a vigorous democracy for the long term. People must have a real stake in the economy. They must believe that their hard work and sacrifice will be rewarded. And they must know that the lives of the children and the children's children will be much better in several tomorrows. Madam Speaker, our policies over the past few years have transformed our economy. We have been consistent, transparent, stable, and true to our word, and that consistency has paid off, Madam Speaker. Our economy is stronger than it has ever been. We have actually doubled our GDP and tripled our revenues since 2006. Foreign reserves are at levels we have never seen before. These policies have not just regained domestic and international investor confidence, they have propelled it to new levels. And what makes us equally proud is that these same policies have empowered ordinary Fijians and given them more choices and more control over their lives. We will see clearly as I reveal our budget priorities, Madam Speaker, that enlightened, bold and consistent management of the economy over time has also given us the ability to expand assistance for the most vulnerable, reinvigorate the civil service, spread the burden of taxation, attract needed medical personnel, improve education, adapt to climate change, and play a greater role on the world stage. This consistency, Madam Speaker, flows from one source: strong, decisive, and visionary leadership. This is the leadership, Madam Speaker, that is exemplified by our Honourable Prime Minister and the Fiji First Government. Every Fijian, Madam Speaker, has felt the benefits of the steady, unwavering progress we have charted in building the new Fiji. They've seen it unfolding before their eyes, and as we've taken the Fijian economy to record heights, as access to opportunity has extended to the most remote corners of our islands, and as the children have realized achievements many only dreamed of realizing themselves. Madam Speaker, this must continue. Madam Speaker, the confidence that is driving our economy has also propelled Fiji into a leadership role. Fiji is the first small state to assume a role as large as the COP23 presidency, which is to be held in Bonn in November. We successfully co-hosted the United Nations Ocean Conference in New York earlier this month, in which the Honourable Prime Minister co-chaired. We will host the Asia Pacific Broadcasting Union Annual General Meeting next year, and the Asian Development Bank Annual Meeting in 2019, the Commonwealth Education Ministers Meeting, and the pre-COP meetings, to name only some. We are a government that adheres to international standards and seeks international cooperation. Our eager endorsement of these conventions and adoption of international standards gives confidence to investors and other governments and helps us improve our economy. It creates jobs and opportunities for ordinary Fijians. Madam Speaker.
Order. The budget speech, unlike other speeches, is a delivery of a pre-printed statement, and interjections are inappropriate at this stage. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, we must dust off the cobwebs that have accumulated over many decades of uninspired management that view the national budget as a yearly exercise to simply allocate money, not as a part of a long-term strategic plan to drive us into the future. For decades, our budgeting was not inspired by development plans. It was not a vehicle to achieve a long-term vision. It was not based on a philosophy of freedom, pragmatism, equality, compassion, and sound economic management. Today, it is all of those things, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, we've been working diligently to consult with experts and the public on the 5-year and 20-year development plans. These development plans have only just been climate sensitized by the World Resources Institute and will be launched this August by the Honourable Prime Minister. An important part of this long-term vision is to steadily remove any legal impediments that affect our economic development or stifle an individual's ability to establish and build a business, take an idea to the marketplace, or simply participate meaningfully in the economy. This is one of the objectives embodied in the details of this budget. But while we want to get rid of unnecessary impediments, we also need to ensure there is greater compliance with those laws and regulations that are necessary for fairness and accountability and to remove corruption. As in earlier budgets, we've been reviewing the legal framework to see how we can greatly improve compliance with tax laws and bring to justice those who use subterfuge to avoid paying their fair share. No modern state can tolerate a situation in which it does not collect the taxes it is due. Madam Speaker, with growth predicted at 3.8% in 2017, the policies of the Fiji First government have given the economy an unprecedented 8 consecutive years of economic growth. And with the economy projected to grow by another 3% and 2.9% in 2018 and 2019 respectively, we will have 10 years of growth, Madam Speaker. 10 years, Madam Speaker, a full decade, unheard of in Fijian history. This means, Madam Speaker, that our economy has almost doubled in 8 years. This means more jobs, higher incomes, and a better standard of living. Importantly, economists and other experts from around the world and rating agencies like Moody's and the World Bank attest that our debt is sustainable and that this prosperity has been shared. Growth has not just benefited the few. Fiji's rising economic tide is indeed lifting all boats. Madam Speaker, no country can exist in isolation in this globalized world. We are all interconnected. Our trade flows have been increasing and the services sector, led by tourism, is flourishing. Foreign reserves are at an all-time high, $2.287 billion as of last week, sufficient to cover 5.7 months of imports. When we compare this to foreign reserves of just around $515 million at the end of 2006. Inflation has also stabilized with year-end inflation forecasted at 3%. I say again, Madam Speaker, it is clear that we are doing it right. Madam Speaker, as we prepared the budget, we held numerous public meetings throughout the country and in 11 major towns with hundreds of students from many high schools and 5 university campuses. We met with private sector in 3 divisions, including bus operators, commercial banks, insurance companies, supermarkets, and others. We held 2 separate meetings with people with disabilities. And of course, we consulted all the ministries, including the respective ministers and their permanent secretaries, to hear from the people who carry out these programs. Madam Speaker, this was a build-up from the previous year's consultations, but we expanded our coverage because of the high participation and the enthusiasm shown last year. We also received many written submissions from the public. We intentionally made this process very inclusive and open, and every Fijian was given a chance to be heard by the government in some way. This, Madam Speaker, is true democracy. In practical terms, this is what an inclusive government is all about. Madam Speaker, we thank every Fijian, especially our young people, for their contributions towards this budget and their contributions for tomorrow in Fiji. Their tomorrow, Madam Speaker. We believe in our young people. They are our future. And I personally, Madam Speaker, learned a lot from my conversations with them. Their willingness to offer constructive solutions and think long-term was an inspiration, something that some older people and politicians can learn from. Madam Speaker, for the 2017 and 2018 budget, our total expenditure stands at $4.357 billion with a total projected revenue of $3.85 billion. That leaves a net deficit of $499.5 million, equivalent to 4.5% of GDP. Madam Speaker, the revised deficit for this fiscal year, the 2016-2017, is estimated at 2% of GDP, substantially lower than the 4.7% projected initially. This is due to prudent management of our finances, savings in operational expenditures, and unforeseen delays in implementation of some of the capital projects as a result of bad weather, shortage of materials, and non-availability of construction companies. So these capital projects have been rolled over to the 2017-2018 fiscal year. And this is why we have a 4.5% deficit for this new budget year. But remember, Madam Speaker, it is just 2% for this fiscal year. It is also important, Madam Speaker, that we do not look at the 2017-2018 deficit in isolation, but see it over a 2-year fiscal period. In particular, after a major natural disaster in the form of the second strongest storm ever recorded globally, T.C. Winston, the average deficit for these 2 fiscal years is just over 3% within a comfortable range. So the Fiji First government, Madam Speaker, is committed to maintaining the current sustainable debt trajectory. Government debt is projected at 47.5% of GDP as of July 2018, much lower than we have projected in the last budget. As we announced last year, Madam Speaker, we have a lot of work ahead of us because we cannot simply replace what we have. Our schools have to be better and safer. We learned after Cyclone Winston that 96% of the schools that were to be rebuilt did not even have architectural plans. They did not comply with building codes. They did not have any engineering designs. And these are the buildings where we send our children to spend an entire day, 5 days a week. It was a disgrace. Madam Speaker, Fijians don't need to be reminded that climate change costs us dearly. T.C. Winston was a slap in our face that still stings. Some of us tragically lost loved ones, our houses, crops or livestock. Children lost days of school, and nearly everyone in the affected areas went days without electricity, transport or water supply. Winston has made it clear that we will need substantial additional financial resources to cope with the effects of and the need to adapt to climate change and natural disasters. Madam Speaker, while we are working towards this, we are also going to mobilize our domestic resources for climate adaptation measures and protecting our environment. In the new fiscal year, Madam Speaker, we intend to issue $100 million worth of green bonds for the first time as part of our total budget financing requirements. The bonds will be specifically targeted towards projects that qualify under green finance. The Ministry of Economy is working with the Reserve Bank of Fiji and the International Finance Corporation to launch these bonds with green bond certification before the COP23 meeting. That means, Madam Speaker, that the bonds will be certified by an international organization as supporting sustainable and environmentally responsible activity. There is a growing community of investors, Madam Speaker, worldwide who demand instruments that are socially responsible, and we want to attract them. And we will also invite our Pacific Island neighbors to participate in this program. Madam Speaker, we will remove the environmental levy and replace it with the Environment and Climate Adaptation Levy, or what is going to be called ECAL. ECAL will be set at 10% and will also be applicable to individual taxpayers earning $270,000 and above, or those who pay the social responsibility levy. But in order to have a neutral tax effect to the current structure, we will reduce the service turnover tax from 10% to 6% and restructure the social responsibility tax to ensure that there is no additional tax burden. In the same vein, Madam Speaker, we will eliminate the 12.5% super yacht charter fee and replace it with a 10% ECAL, 2.5% lower, Madam Speaker. So the impact on the services sector, where the environmental levy and service turnover tax were applied, will be neutral. Madam Speaker, businesses investing in electric vehicle charging stations can qualify for the 7-year tax holidays with an investment of $500,000 instead of the current $3 million. And they can receive a 5% subsidy on the total investment. Madam Speaker, from 1st of August, government will impose a 10-cent tax on plastic bags at retail outlets that have point-of-sale registers. We want to discourage the proliferation of plastic bags which escape easily into the environment and end up in fields and along roads, roadsides, in waterways and in the ocean where they are serious danger to marine life. They are a solid waste nightmare. Putting even a small price on bags will curtail this kind of destructive waste and force consumers and retailers alike to use only what they need, and that will benefit the environment. Consumers will be doing a service for the environment and avoiding this tax if they use their own bags. To complement this, Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Women, through the Honourable Minister for Women, will work with the supermarkets so that our women and women groups can be engaged to make reusable bags and sell them at the supermarkets. These bags were on sale at the recent Women's Expo. This is a creative way to turn an environmental challenge into an economic opportunity. Madam Speaker, all the revenues collected from the ECAL will go into a trust fund to be used specifically for environmental and climate adaptation projects and to relevant ministries. And it is projected, Madam Speaker, that the total revenue from ECAL for the 2017-2018 period will be about $94 million. Madam Speaker, we will also on an annual basis report to our citizens and tourists alike on how this trust fund has been managed. Madam Speaker, we are establishing a new Ministry of Waterways, which will be responsible for dredging waterways, realigning drainage systems, managing riverbanks, mitigating flooding, and managing stormwater. The new ministry will also be responsible for coordinating smart agricultural irrigation schemes. Many of our waterways flood frequently, not just the river mouth, but upstream and beyond. This flooding inundates towns and makes roads and our highways impassable. We see floods as an act of God, but often they're the direct result of human activity and human negligence. Heavy silting is the result of decades of neglect, illegal developments, land degradation, and changing weather patterns. And we are experiencing excessive flooding because these waterways have not been dredged or maintained for years. The Land and Water Resource Management Division within the Ministry of Agriculture will now be transferred to this new ministry, and the Honourable Prime Minister will soon announce the appointment of the new minister. We'll also do away with the very cumbersome bureaucratic process of drainage boards. Madam Speaker, Government has allocated $24.2 million in this budget for the functioning of this ministry. And we're also having discussions with the Green Climate Fund, which is keen to provide funding. However, Madam Speaker, we need more than funding to fix our waterways. We also need technical expertise, and in this context, we've had discussions with the Global Green Growth Institute also. Madam Speaker, Government is also going to tackle head-on the issue of flooding in Nandi. Nandi is Fiji's gateway to the world. It is the fastest growing urban centre and soon to be declared a city. And flooding is a major problem. The feasibility study report on the Nandi River, sponsored by the Japanese government, estimates the cost at $385 million over a 3-year period to widen and rehabilitate the Nandi River, including building infrastructures like levees and 3 bridges. The design and environmental study needed to begin the project will commence shortly, and indeed the tender was advertised this Tuesday. Government has allocated $10 million for the study and has been working closely with the Asian Development Bank to access funding from the Green Climate Fund for this project. We also have to add, Madam Speaker, that the Japanese government has also offered us a soft loan for this project. Madam Speaker, we are now also going to merge the functions and the budgets of the National Disaster Management Office and the Department of Meteorological Services under a new ministry, the Ministry of Natural Disaster Management and Meteorological Services, with a total budget of $15.2 million. Madam Speaker, Government is also partnering with the Global Green Growth Institute to explore the options for transitioning the islands of Taveuni and Ovalau to electricity generation that is 100% renewable. The Korean International Cooperation Agency, KOICA, has shown interest to finance this project. Madam Speaker, let me also clarify a number of things in relation to our cost of living that has been excessively politicized. In fact, Madam Speaker, Fijians are being continuously misled to an appalling extent with facts that are being deliberately manipulated, half-truths, in fact, at times, no truths, masquerading as facts, data, and numbers created out of thin air. The fact, Madam Speaker, is that no government in the past has ever taken such huge leaps to improve the lives and livelihoods of ordinary Fijians. This government, unlike any other, has introduced a number of policies, many of which are unprecedented, to address bread and butter issues and ensure that the cost of living is kept low. Our policies are increasing people's spending power. Because parents no longer pay school fees, they may be able to improve their house. Because the medicines are subsidized, they might buy more clothes for their children. Because they no longer pay to connect to electricity or water, they can put money in the bank to save for emergencies. This literally puts more money in their hands so that they can make their own economic choices. We have done this by fully funding schools, by lowering VAT across the board, by lowering taxes, by lowering duties, by increasing welfare payments, by subsidizing medicines and bus fares, and providing legal aid. It is a fact, Madam Speaker, that Fijians are consuming more now. Most of our indicators show strong consumption activity in the country. Vehicle ownership has substantially increased. There are about 500,000 smartphones in our country, in a country of about less than 900,000 people. There are more SIM cards in Fiji than actual people. Duty and VAT have decreased on items Fijians use every day. Home construction is rising. More factories and warehouses are being built. People are making improvements to their homes. Thousands of young Fijians are going to universities and technical colleges more than ever before. This is happening because all the economic and social measures government has taken work together to give people more disposable income. Still, Madam Speaker, we hear the simplistic cry to single out products for VAT exemptions. It is the siren song of populism, a shameless appeal to emotion that tries to conceal a fundamental lie. But this government, Madam Speaker, prefers to treat problems, not symptoms. We prefer a systemic cure and sound economic management, not magic elixirs and band-aids. A cure that reflects the real way people live and shop. This government, Madam Speaker, has reduced VAT on all these consumables and also on other day-to-day commodities that people need. This has made them affordable and reachable, and that has expanded every household's budget. However, Madam Speaker, despite reducing VAT and duty, we all know that some businesses do not pass on the reduced VAT and duty to the consumers. 35 companies have now been prosecuted for this violation and will continue to vigorously enforce the law. We've also discovered, for example, Madam Speaker, when we had reduced the duty on cereals to 0%, for example, the price on these cereals did not come down. That is because 4 or 5 food importers control 60 to 70% of the market, and they are often exclusive suppliers of some of these items. They dictate prices, and they maintain their power by threatening retailers. Sell it at our price or we'll cut you off. For example, we removed duty on baby product items last year, but Johnson & Johnson products are imported by only one company, and it can dictate the selling price to the retailers. And the supermarkets and pharmacies, unfortunately, have to pass on these prices to the consumers. So no amount of VAT exemption will reduce the price of these items. No amount. In order to remedy the situation, Madam Speaker, we made it an offence in the last budget for businesses not passing on VAT and duty reductions. To give this measure more teeth, for the first time, we have set up a separate unit in FIJI and the Ministry of Economy to work very closely with the Commerce Commission to ensure that those in monopolistic positions cannot dictate prices. The Commerce Commission will be empowered to monitor the prices of wholesalers and those who hold sole distribution rights, and any who hold monopolistic positions and who will now have to justify their prices. The Commerce Commission will work with FIJI to go behind the screen to investigate abuses and develop appropriate regulations to ensure prices are not dictated through monopolies or cartels and to ensure compliance with the law. So in the near future, Madam Speaker, the prices you will see in the supermarket shelves will not be the ones dictated by these bandits. Madam Speaker, in the same context, we have already conducted meetings with major supermarket chains only last week. Of course, some of them have not been doing the right thing either. They've set up buying houses offshore. So they buy products overseas through these companies of theirs they set up offshore and sell goods to themselves. So effectively, they buy an item twice and try to claim their markup is less than it is. They over-invoice and shift their profits, Madam Speaker. Their greed is pricing many Fijians out of the market for things they should be able to afford. This will not continue, and we want to assure all Fijians that we will have a fair and competitive market. Recently, Madam Speaker, by way of example, FIRCA found anomalies at one supermarket chain that resulted in penalties and fines for that supermarket and assessments that will total $53 million. $53 million, Madam Speaker, just from one supermarket chain. Madam Speaker, imagine how many more there are out there that we can prosecute, and they've already started paying those fines. Also, Madam Speaker, there are still cartel retailers in Fiji. So 2 or 3 suppliers of a particular product can agree not to sell a product below a particular price. This is price fixing. Madam Speaker, it has no place in a free economy, and our government will no longer tolerate companies that want to make enormous margins through greed. They hold back the economy, they hold back growth, they hold back the ability of ordinary Fijians to spend in other areas. We are providing additional funding to the Fiji Commerce Commission, and FIRCA will establish a unit to enforce the law. The Ministry of Economy will also establish an economic intelligence unit. Madam Speaker, in this budget, government is restructuring the social protection regime to make it more targeted and more effective. The Ministry of Women, Children and Poverty Alleviation has been provided a budget of $113.4 million for the upcoming fiscal year, an increase of almost $46.9 million. Allowances under the various social protection programs will increase. The funding provided under the Poverty Benefit Scheme has increased from $23.2 million to $38.1 million. All qualifying households will receive a 15% increase in allowances. We want this program to do more than just help people survive. We want to allow people to live with dignity, We want them to make their own choices about what to buy, so that a woman does not have to forego sanitary pads for herself and her daughters, so that everyday items like deodorant are not luxuries. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the monthly allowance of an individual under the scheme will now be $35 instead of the current $30. A household with 2 persons will receive an increase from $50 to $58, while a household with 3 persons will receive $104 compared to $90. And the list goes on, Madam Speaker. The Child Protection Allowance will also have a larger budget of $6.8 million, an increase of $3.3 million. The allowance will rise 15%, and grandparents and uncles and aunties who are caring for these abandoned children will receive up to $69 per month per child to assist with their care. Madam Speaker, government has increased funding for the social pension scheme. It rises from $14 million to $37.2 million. Government will also restructure this program, which we established in 2013 for persons who are 70 years and over and who did not have any superannuation support. These are people who usually live in villages and farms and have been self-employed for the entirety of their lives. They do not have FNPF. We started off with a $30 monthly pension allowance and have steadily reduced the age requirement and increased the pension allocation for this targeted group. In this fiscal year, eligibility has been further lowered to 65 years, where it will stay. Many of these elderly people
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. A very, I'm not sure if it's an interesting announcement at this stage. Initial comments from what we've heard so far. We'll start with you, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, Chair, and welcome everyone. I can see that the minister actually is going on explaining things more than actually coming out and giving us figures. But you see, the budget remains expansionary. 4.5% deficit is a huge one, and we expect this year to be a normal year, not like the one we had before. Where we had, Cyclone Winston and so on, where you would have expected the government to be expansionary, giving, lots of, support and all that. Keeping in mind that it could be a normal year, the government has put a 4.5% deficit, and which I think is a bit irresponsible. Nonetheless, there.
Can I intervene here? Sorry, Dr. Kumar, it just appears that the Parliament is now back on, so sorry, I do not want to interject there, otherwise you might miss the critical issue. So we'll now go back to Parliament at this stage. Thank you.
And the New Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act that is aligned to the Convention is currently the relevant Parliamentary Standing Committee for review, I should say the bill. To ensure compliance and implementation of the Convention and the bill once enacted, the Fiji National Council for Disabled Persons has been allocated a funding of $1.2 million, an increase of over $700,000. Madam Speaker, government has allocated a new funding of around $8 million as separate allowances for our citizens with disabilities. Previously, allocation was made under the social welfare scheme, but we need to recognize that persons with disabilities often have a very specific and distinct need. Madam Speaker, people with permanent disabilities will also be provided a monthly allowance of $90 per month. Additionally, $1.6 million is provided as grants to organizations serving disabled persons. This funding will also cater for the completion of the Western Disabled Center. Of course, Madam Speaker, we will, as announced last year, continue the 300% tax deduction on wages paid to disabled employees. The bus fare subsidy for people with disabilities will also continue, and $120,000 has been allocated to promote participation of disabled persons in sporting activities. Madam Speaker, government will also provide funding to the Fiji Roads Authority to ensure that new roads and footpaths are disabled friendly and provide easy access. Apart from this, we have made a separate allocation of $500,000 to FRA to retrofit existing footpaths starting within the municipality so people with wheelchairs can cross the road from one curb to the other. We've also allocated, Madam Speaker, funding to retrofit government offices that are visited by a large number of citizens to make them accessible to the disabled. Madam Speaker, government has also allocated in this budget, Madam Speaker, $850,000 to the Frank Hilton organization. This funding will allow this highly respected institution to work in Fiji to detect disabilities in very young children and then intervene with appropriate therapies. The Hilton organization's speech therapists, audiologists, physical therapists and counselors are widely respected for their outstanding work they do in diagnosing and treating disabilities and in working closely with families to help them adapt to raising children with special needs. Madam Speaker, in the 21st century, there is no reason to give up on children with disabilities. With early intervention, proper attention and loving families who are prepared to help them, they can look forward to meaningful and productive lives. Madam Speaker, as announced by the Honourable Minister for Employment, we have conducted a minimum wage assessment and we are increasing the national minimum wage for unskilled workers from $2.32 an hour to $2.68 an hour. This rate is only for unskilled workers and also who are not part of the 10 sectorial-based wages councils. These employees in the 10 sectorial-based categories have much higher rates, but they will also get an increase in their minimum rates. Madam Speaker, those who advocate an arbitrary minimum wage rise for the unskilled workforce are clearly trying to gain political mileage. We prefer a responsible approach, a sustainable approach, one that serves the wage earners and the public good. It is an affordable rate based on productivity improvements. It is responsible and based on sound economic thinking and a desire to help as many people as possible without causing disruptions in the economy. Raising the wage too much would actually cause a loss of jobs. We must also be mindful of the inflationary impact of wage increase. Many people might not be able to afford domestic help, or what we unfortunately call house girls in Fiji, for example. And small businesses might not be able to afford helpers. And it would drive costs up too much for many self-employed people and people in the informal economy. This wage rate was after a thorough examination of many competing factors and extensive consultations. It also took into account the impact of government policies, in particular for low-income families, such as free education, free medicine, subsidized bus fares, subsidized electricity, free water, scholarships and TELS. When we considered raising the minimum wage, Madam Speaker, we could not overlook the people who are self-employed or work in the informal sector. There are approximately 130,000 people, 130,000 Fijians who drive taxis, own micro-enterprises, sell in markets or the roadsides, people who sell coconuts by the roadsides, sell bananas by the roadsides. The increase in minimum wage does not help them. In fact, it could raise costs of goods and services to them, and they have no way to offset these costs. Raising the minimum wage too much would do them great harm. A responsible government must be concerned with the effects of a wage rise on everyone in society and try to do what benefits the most people and disadvantages the fewest. And that is what we have done. However, Madam Speaker, as we have seen, the strong economy is naturally pushing up wages in several areas. Some workers whose set minimum wages is around about $3.50 an hour are being paid $7 an hour. And other workers, electricians for example, have seen wages rise from $4 an hour as much as $12 an hour. So the prospect for wages in this economy, Madam Speaker, is good. Madam Speaker, a total budget of $4.4 million is provided in the 2017-2018 budget for programs that directly serve our women. Funding to implement the Women's Plan of Action has been increased to $1.4 million. This program will provide women with financial assistance and training to generate their own income. It will promote the elimination of violence against women and advocate women's rights, improve women's access to health, education, and reproductive services. The Domestic Violence Helpline that we launched this year is in partnership with the Fiji Women's Crisis Center. Government will continue to fund the National Women's Expo with a budget of $500,000 to promote women entrepreneurship and help women generate independent income and connect them to the private sector. Madam Speaker, this government believes that every Fijian must have equal access to justice. The quality of justice should be the same for all Fijians, whether they live in Suva or Kandavu, whether they are a corporation or market vendor, whether they live in a high-rise apartment or a squatter settlement. Madam Speaker, there are now 16 legal aid offices around the country and a staff complement of 165. 5 new offices will be opened this year in Kandavu, Rotuma, Wunindawa, Kayasi and Senganga. We will recruit 44 new staff, and from this number, 20 will be for those new offices. Legal aid is also now authorized to represent people who receive eviction notices without proper notice and procedure, an area where tenants have traditionally been at great disadvantage. The Commission will have a budget of $8.4 million. Madam Speaker, we have made a special effort in budget consultations to reach out to our young people. This government believes in our youth. We very firmly believe in our youth. They are our future leaders, and it is critical for us to invest in them and harness their energy, their pragmatism, and indeed their idealism. Madam Speaker, for the 2017-2018 budget, government has allocated a total of around $964.5 million towards the provision of quality education. This is a huge allocation, accounting for 22% of the total budget. Here is the breakdown of the significant changes for this budget, Madam Speaker. The Ministry of Education will have a total budget of $490 million. From this total amount, Madam Speaker, government will provide $5.55 million to recruit 250 additional teachers, 200 for primary schools and 50 for secondary. This supports government's commitment to improve the teacher-student ratio. The budget provides substantial funding of $170 million to rebuild and repair schools damaged by TC Winston. Madam Speaker, we expect to complete the construction in the 2017-2018 fiscal year. Apart from this, Madam Speaker, a total of $10.6 million has been allocated under the Ministry of Education as building grants for rehabilitation of schools damaged by TC Winston. Madam Speaker, we are making substantial increases to the funding allocation to support tertiary students following our consultations with them and high school students in the lead up to the budget preparations. For the National Toppers Scheme, the budget for this program will increase to $32.3 million. There is no increase in the number of new scholarships, which remains at 630, but the increase is necessary to continue the scholarships for new and current Toppers scholars. The allocation will stabilize once we have a full 4-year complement of scholarship recipients. We are making major changes to TELS, Madam Speaker, to make it more flexible and more responsive to the experience of students today. Government will no longer require TELS recipients to have guarantors. Only students planning to travel overseas will need a guarantor in the future, and guarantors who are currently repaying loans will continue paying on those defaulted loans at the interest rates that were announced when the program started. Madam Speaker, students can now change their program, major or minor under TELS, but only once for the duration of the study. Currently, they're not allowed to do that. We understand that a student's university years is a time of discovery and searching, and that should not be discouraged. If a student at 19 years of age decides to study accounting and programming and later discovers that she prefers management instead of programming, she should not be discouraged from switching her course of study. She should have access to TELS. Madam Speaker, at times some TELS students might fail some subjects. We don't want to give up on these students also. So from 1 January 2018, TELS students will be eligible to repeat a failed unit, but only once. TELS will also be extended to allow for successive upgrade of qualifications for students up to the first bachelor's degree. What this means, Madam Speaker, is that a student who is enrolled in a certificate program can now choose to continue to a higher level of qualification up till a degree. Currently, upon completion of a study, a student cannot continue at TELS for higher education until the existing TELS debt has been paid off. We are also extending TELS eligibility for students who pass year 12 and who meet the minimum requirements for certain engineering courses at the Fiji National University. We have a huge demand for engineers, Madam Speaker, and these courses will actually be able to provide us with that feed into our employment market. Madam Speaker, to provide more financial support for students in between semesters and trimesters, government now will also provide allowance for students even during that period. This will not include the holiday period in December, however. What this means, Madam Speaker, is that a semester student will now receive an annual allowance of $6,600 instead of the current $4,334. And a trimester-based student will receive an allowance of $7,125 instead of the current $5,736. This will allow the student to meet ongoing expenses, including meals, transportation, and accommodation during this period. We also provide TELS students an allowance of $1,000 for incidentals and book allowance for TELS students for the first time. For students studying overseas, Madam Speaker, under a full scholarship by a host country, we will increase the allowance and standardize it at US $2,400 or approximately Fijian $5,000 per annum. This is an increase from the current range of Fijian $2,500 to $3,700. This increase is to supplement the existing allowances so that the students are able to meet the cost of living in those countries. Madam Speaker, we have now given the students who reside in the university residence the option to receive the meal allowance component directly. For example, the Fiji National University currently receives the accommodation and meal allowance directly from the TSLB for students living on campus. Moving forward, Madam Speaker, the cost of accommodation will be paid directly to the university, and the remaining allowance will be paid directly to the students to be used for food or other necessities as they see fit, or they might want to eat out, or they want to buy their own meal. Madam Speaker, FIRCA will now directly collect tertiary education loan debt with a simpler, more transparent and more efficient process. Because all students, when they apply for TELS, need to have a TIN number. Once they start working, that's when they pay the debt, and FIRCA will have the TIN number also then too. The total funding for the tertiary education loan scheme, the National Topper Scheme and other scholarships is increased from $115.4 million to $196 million. This is an increase of around $80.6 million. Madam Speaker, the TSLB will now have an increased allocation of $2.7 million to manage the tertiary education schools and provide services to their customers, the students, more efficiently, and they now have new divisional officers in Lautoka and Lambasa, making it easier for them. We are also providing increased grants to other higher education institutions such as Montfort Boys Town in Savu and Besari. The Fiji National University has been provided an operating grant of $56.1 million. This is to provide for teachers' salaries and to be able to attract better quality lecturers, provide for broader high-capacity internet through the Australian Academic Research Internet, or ARNet, to be available to students and lecturers alike, and improve the teaching facilities. We also are providing an operating grant of $30.7 million to USP and $3.4 million to the University of Fiji. Madam Speaker, we also wish to make an announcement on a new initiative. Government will, from 1 January 2018, give a one-off startup allowance of $300 to those degree graduates whose household income is less than $30,000 and who have registered with the National Employment Centre. This is to give our graduates the opportunity to be able to prepare for job interviews such as buying equipment or appropriate clothing. In a nutshell, Madam Speaker, all these funding allocations towards the provision of quality education total to around $964.5 million, the largest chunk of our budget and for the future of our nation. While the $170 million is a one-off expenditure for rebuilding schools, the education budget will now be the largest of any sector. An investment in our youth, an investment in creating a knowledge-based country, and an investment, as I said, Madam Speaker, in our future. Madam Speaker, we also know that athletic activity is critical to the development of our young people and to maintain the good health of our adults. Therefore, we have, Madam Speaker, increased the allocation for the Ministry of Youth and Sports by $6.7 million, which includes the ongoing construction of integrated sporting complexes around Fiji. Madam Speaker, Fiji is known and respected in international sports, especially since our gold medal win in the Rio Olympics. And I would actually add too, especially our win over Scotland last weekend. We want to build on our successes and make sure that the name Fiji is truly associated with quality sports around the world, as a venue and as a participant. To that end, Madam Speaker, the National Sports Commission through the Ministry of Youth and Sports will receive $9 million for 3 major programs. First, we will continue to fund the engagement of international coaches to improve our competitiveness. We'll also help our national teams participate in 38 international competitions, including the 2017 Rugby League World Cup, the 2018 Commonwealth Games, and the Pacific Mini Games in Papua New Guinea. And we will also host international tournaments in Fiji, including the Oceania Men's and Women's Sevens Tournament, 2017 World Cadet Table Tennis Challenge, the Junior Pan-Pacific Games in swimming, and the Fijian Rugby 15 team international matches, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Government has set aside the old St. Stephen's building, which is a Class A heritage building, to serve as the new National Gallery for Contemporary Art. It is a major cultural initiative that recognizes the explosion of creative talent among Fijian artists in recent years and gives them a venue to showcase their work to the nation and the world. The project is also an important exercise in nation building and a representative and inclusive expression of Fijian identity that celebrates the diversity of Fijian society. We are currently in discussions with the British High Commission to secure technical assistance through the British Council for the project. Government will set aside $500,000 in this budget for this project. It will help bring Fijian artists to the world's attention, be a focal point for cultural exchange, and encourage more of our young people to develop their own artistic expression. Madam Speaker, Government is working with the private sector to find creative ways to develop our housing market and place home ownership within the reach of every Fijian. Because for years, Madam Speaker, affordability has been held back many of our people from ever owning their own homes. And right now, the rate of home ownership in Fiji is extremely low. And for those who do manage to buy a home, it tends to happen at a much later stage in their life. Madam Speaker, real estate can be a vehicle for progress and a mechanism for improving one's social mobility. And we need to open the opportunity for as many Fijians as possible to buy homes that will appreciate and build value. For example, if you buy an apartment, as the market grows, so would the value of that property, and eventually you'll be able to afford an even bigger and better home. Madam Speaker, unfortunately, affordable housing in Fiji currently has many negative connotations, and some low-cost housing areas have essentially become ghettos, devoid of opportunity with dim prospect for social mobility. Instead of bringing Fijians together, these programs are sadly driving our people apart. Madam Speaker, we needed to take a step back and address the root of the problem, and that, as any home buyer can attest, is the high cost of finance, high interest rates, and availability of homes that are cutting many dreams of home ownership in Fiji short. So we are proud to announce the Reserve Bank of Fiji, in conjunction with the Fijian government, has increased funds available for affordable housing from $25 million to $60 million. The funds will be made available at 1% to banks, which could then make financing available at a maximum of 5% for households with income of less than $50,000 a year. Madam Speaker, as we address this issue from a financial standpoint, we are also working with FNPF and the private sector to construct affordable residential buildings and issue strata titles. In the first of these partnerships, the government-funded Matavolivoli development in Votolevu, Nandi, will be given to FNPF to construct a mixed-income, multi-unit housing development. Once completed, the development will offer different price points. So on one floor, you could have units at affordable pricing, mid-range pricing, and other units offered at top rates. So, Madam Speaker, we won't just be putting up a building, we'll build a community that over time will appreciate the value of its property and raise value for all its members. And FNPF views its support of this project as part of its social responsibility to all of its members. Together, our financial reform and development partnership will give young people, new families, and all those who have long waited for this chance to own their own homes. And anyone who does purchase strata apartments through approved home developers, such as FNPF, can also qualify for the $10,000 grant under the First Home Buyer Program. To simultaneously increase the availability of public rental housing, we are consulting with development partners to develop models to partner with the private sector to provide an immediate stockpile of public rental housing. And we will call for expressions of interest from the private sector very soon in this respect. Madam Speaker, of course, we will continue with our other work to develop squatter settlements and regularize squatters on state and Itauke land, to grant security of tenure. In fact, Madam Speaker, in order to encourage greater development in these communities, we've spoken with insurance companies and banks to offer attractive packages for squatters to take full advantage when they issue the secure and long-term leases to build better homes, improve their communities, and raise the standards of living. Madam Speaker, government has this year again provided $10 million for the Itauke land development, which will assist landowners to receive high returns. As you saw only 2 days ago, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister was in Yandua in Nandronga. Yesterday, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister was in Yandua in Nandronga, in Vunda, in Sawani, in Warembitia, in Latoka. And we hope to in the next 6 weeks, Madam Speaker, the Honourable Prime Minister will be in Namara in Tailevu to be able to open another groundbreaking ceremony there for the development of land in Tailevu, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, development of micro, small and medium enterprises is vital to create jobs, generate incomes, promote entrepreneurship and improve rural livelihoods. $2.8 million is allocated to establish the MSME Central Coordinating Agency, which will provide support for MSME incubation, training and mentoring. Government will continue with its highly successful microfinance business grant scheme, which will assist approximately 6,400 small business initiatives. Madam Speaker, government will also dedicate $2 million for a new program to promote young entrepreneurs, Madam Speaker. We want to encourage job creators, not just job seekers. The Young Entrepreneurship Scheme, Madam Speaker, or what we call in acronym, YES, as it will be known, will offer grants up to a maximum of $20,000 to Fijians between the ages of 18 to 30 to develop or expand innovative business ideas. We have some very smart young graduates who may want to develop apps, mobile apps, and other products through the ITC sector. They need a small capital grant, Madam Speaker. This is a partnership also, Madam Speaker, in the scheme with the private sector, and the CEO of ANZ has already agreed to chair a panel that will assess these applications. This is similar to the Commercial Agricultural Scholarship Program, which encourages young people to enter commercial farming by issuing them with a 99-year commercial lease and providing with them with a startup grant. Madam Speaker, in the next fiscal year, through a pilot program, 20 talented and promising youth workers will be recruited by the Ministry of Youth and Sports to work directly with communities. These workers will be selected using the open merit recruitment system, and they will be paid and for full-time employment. We want to capture the energy and imagination of these young people to help develop other young people in Fiji. Madam Speaker, to streamline the current process of obtaining construction permits for commercial and industrial buildings, Government will establish a Building Construction and Approvals Committee by January of 2018. This committee will coordinate and fast-track the approval processes and will comprise of approval agencies, key private sector stakeholders and government. The decision of the committee will be final and binding, and this will be mandated by law, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, there is also a lot of state-owned properties on vast areas of land, including prime land. We are talking to the Singaporean government through its world-renowned urban and housing planning agencies to assess government properties with a view to providing better returns to government and using such land to provide housing options also for our civil servants, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the reforms in our state-owned enterprises and statutory authorities have been rewarding. The improvements that have been made in corporate governance, transparency and accountability, personnel and commercial availability are also evidence in the improved performance. For example, Airports Fiji Limited, Madam Speaker, will pay dividends of $43 million in August of this year. And FIA has declared its first ever dividend of some $20 million. No one ever considered this a possibility in the past. Government will continue to offer shares in state enterprises or partner with reputable private companies to manage them with the goal of making them more market-driven, profitable, modern, efficient, and, very importantly, service-driven. These divestments and restructuring will also provide investment opportunities to ordinary Fijians through their participation in the capital markets. Madam Speaker, government will continue to give strong support to the sugar industry. The most effective way to do that is to make the two parts of that industry, the cane growers and the processors, more efficient and more competitive by reducing the costs of the inputs. The most advanced sugar mills in the world are useless without enough high-quality cane at crushing time. And the world's best cane farmers with the most fertile soil and most advanced techniques would be left high and dry without modern efficient mills, a strong infrastructure and a lean cost structure. So if we can reduce the costs and improve the efficiency of both parts of our sugarcane industry, we will thrive even in today's global market. As you may be aware, Madam Speaker, Parliament in May of this year approved a $202 million government guarantee to enable FSC to undertake a number of capital projects, including mechanization, upgrade of the existing rail infrastructure, and a phased upgrade of all the three of our mills. This is a vote of confidence in the executive leadership and the board of directors of the FSC. This was good news for the mills and the cane growers, Madam Speaker, but it's just half of the equation. The other half is to focus intensively on reducing costs to cane growers. This is what continuously the Honourable Prime Minister has been saying as the Minister responsible for sugar. The Ministry of Sugar, Madam Speaker, is provided a budget of around $60 million, almost double its previous allocation. Government is increasing the fertilizer subsidy from $14.09 to $25.59 per 50 kilogram of bag at a cost of $15.4 million, an increase of nearly $6 million. With this assistance, farmers will now only pay $20 a bag compared to $31.50 per bag that they're currently paying. The government is also allocating for the first time $6.3 million to subsidize the cost of products to control weeds and raise cane yield. This is the first time such a subsidy is being provided, and again it will reduce the cost to individual farmers. There is an increased budget of $15.4 million under the Sugarcane Development and Farmer Assistance Program to increase cane replanting and production. Under this program, Madam Speaker, grants are provided to farmers to defray the cost of cane planting in fallow land and also for ratoon restoration. With this funding support, we expect 2,000 hectares of new cane and over 9,000 hectares of ratoon crop. Government is doubling the allocation to upgrade Cane Access Road to $6 million, Madam Speaker. It will upgrade 3,876 kilometers of road, including installation of culverts and maintenance of crossings. In addition, a sum of $2 million is allocated to improve infill drainage and systems to control water runoff from farms. Madam Speaker, as we have stated on numerous occasions, government will also pick up the cartage cost from Penang to Rarawai at a cost of $5.1 million. No farmer who used to get his cane crushed in Penang Mill, Madam Speaker, and who now uses Rarawai will be out of pocket as far as cartage fees are concerned, Madam Speaker. Let me repeat that, Madam Speaker, because there are a number of people in and outside of this Parliament who continue to spread lies about this very issue. To give credibility to farmers and to complement the 3-year revitalization program to FSC, these subsidies, Madam Speaker, will continue for a minimum of 3 years. As you are aware, Madam Speaker, government had earlier this year provided $10.2 million for sugarcane farmers with a fourth cane payment to pay for the deductions. Those farmers who did not benefit from this payment will receive $4 million in the 2017-2018 budget. The assistance will go to 619 farmers in the Latoka Mill area, 1,012 farmers in Rarawai Mill area, 1,355 Lambasa farmers, and 180 farmers in the Penang area. A total of 3,167 farmers will be assisted. Madam Speaker, we need a strong sugar cane sector well into the future. And so $5 million is provided to encourage new sugarcane farming. This package includes funding that will help around 150 new cane farmers enter and remain in the sugarcane industry. Government is allocating $1 million for mechanization, and a further $1 million is also provided to assist farmers with procurement of fencing materials, irrigation pumps, and implements. One other huge cost for farmers, Madam Speaker, is cane harvesting. In other words, cane cutting itself. The use of mechanized cane harvesters is to not only create efficiency, but to reduce the cost of harvesting. Unfortunately, however, Madam Speaker, given the dominant position of the suppliers of these harvesters, mechanical harvesters, and uncompetitive environment, the cost of harvesting has not necessarily decreased for farmers. Accordingly, government commissioned the Fiji Commerce Commission and the FSC to examine this cost. After extensive consultations and examination, and after allowing for a profit of 19% for harvesters, the Commerce Commission has determined that no harvester should charge a rate of more than $17.50 a ton. This new rate, Madam Speaker, will be gazetted by the Honourable Minister for Industry and Trade. This, Madam Speaker, will significantly bring down the cost of production for farmers. We have today, Madam Speaker, at the moment, cane harvesters owned by individuals, and some of them by the fair trade organizations, some of the cooperatives, charging as high as $33 a ton. In addition, to also address the cartage cartel and reduce the cost for farmers, Madam Speaker, the FSC, Madam Speaker, will over 2 harvesting seasons beginning this year, will import itself and operate itself 300 new trucks for cartage of cane. 200 of these trucks will be tipper trucks and 100 will be flatbed trucks. The injection of 300 trucks owned and operated by the FSC with the sole purpose of bringing about efficiency and reduction of cost to farmers will provide competition and improve the level of service to farmers. The FSC will be exempt from paying the 5% tariff on the importation of these brand new trucks. Madam Speaker, FSC itself will also invest in 20 new harvesters to again provide better pricing for farmers and create greater efficiency. This, Madam Speaker, is what is required for the sugarcane industry, not gimmickry. Madam Speaker, government is continuing with investments to modernize our roads, bridges and jetties. The Fiji Roads Authority will have a funding of $527.5 million, comprising of $26.8 million for operational expenditure, including building capacity within FRA. $500.8 million is allocated for capital projects. $85.2 million of these projects are funded through loans, Madam Speaker. We will continue with the 4-laning projects, and we will have a strong focus on rural roads and improving safety through better lighting, construction of footpaths in urban and peri-urban areas, and tar sealing of rural roads in front of schools, villages, settlements, and places of worship. Madam Speaker, government will continue with these investments to ensure that all Fijians have access to electricity by 2020. Government is funding the rural electrification project at around $33.8 million, an increase of around $19 million. This will cater for some 144 grid extensions by FEA. It will benefit nearly 2,204 households and include installation of 76 solar home systems. Madam Speaker, government has also restructured the way in which the electricity subsidy will be given. All households with an annual income below $30,000 will be eligible for subsidy for the first 100 kilowatt hours of electricity usage per month. The current regulation sets the limit at 95 kilowatts, and users are denied the subsidy if they exceed that usage even slightly. This new approach will be fairer to larger households and eliminate a great deal of uncertainty, because the subsidy is guaranteed no matter how much power is used. So, Madam Speaker, if a household earns less than $30,000 a year, is using 100 kilowatt of hours of electricity, the bill would be cut in half from $34 to $17 a month. Anything above 100 kilowatts will attract the full rate. Through this scheme, more Fijian households will receive subsidized electricity. Madam Speaker, government is undertaking further investments to improve access to safe and clean drinking water for all Fijians. The Water Authority of Fiji has been provided an increased budget of $306.9 million, comprising of $89.5 million to cover operating costs and $217.4 million for capital expenditure. Of this, $14.7 million is for improvements and upgrades to existing water treatment plants. $57.3 million is for improvements in water distribution systems to satisfy growing demand. This includes replacing aged pipes, extending water mains to increase coverage, and connect non-meter areas to WAF's reticulation system, and upgrading existing water reticulation systems. Madam Speaker, a total of $36.2 million is allocated for urban water development and waste management, including works for expanding water supply capacity in the Greater Suva area. As part of this, a 40 million litre treatment plant will be constructed in Viria Rewa. Madam Speaker, we have also made policy changes to encourage long-term investment in public transportation. With our growing economy, Madam Speaker, we have more private vehicles in Fiji. This is positive for Fijians, for individuals who have now access to their own vehicle. But more vehicles, Madam Speaker, mean more traffic. And in time, Madam Speaker, Fijians will need to turn more to public transportation to move about the cities, go to home, go to work, and move around the country comfortably. So we need to improve the quality of these public vehicles. Madam Speaker, we need to help our operators of buses, minibuses, carriers, rentals, hire cars and taxis buy modern, comfortable, fuel-efficient vehicles. We need to give them security so they can plan for the long term. So public service vehicle permit holders will now be able to use those permits as collateral with commercial banks. The regulations will be changed. Furthermore, permits for taxis, hire cars, rentals, minibuses and carriers will now be renewed for 10 years instead of the current 3. Road route licenses for buses or omnibuses, the big buses, will now be renewed for 15 years instead of the current 5 to 10 years. And rental car companies no longer have to get approval from LTA simply to increase the size of their fleets. All current permit holders, Madam Speaker, will automatically get a 10-year permit from the 1st of October of this year. This initiative will create an added value for permit holders and create interest from mainstream financial institutions to lend at attractive rates. Currently, bus companies borrow money at 18%, at 12%. To further assist the small operators, Madam Speaker, the Reserve Bank of Fiji has increased the funding available under the Import Substitution and Export Finance Facility to $100 million to provide concessionary funding for public transportation. RBF will lend to mainstream banks at 1%, and these banks will not charge more than 5% to these operators for their loans. This subsidized loan facility will be available to bus companies which have an annual gross turnover of less than $1.5 million, or to those operators who own only one taxi, minibus or carrier. Furthermore, the duty on these vehicles will be reduced as follows. The import duty on second-hand hybrid cars for single taxi operators has been reduced to half the current $2,000 level for a period of 2 years. All new hybrid vehicles will be imported duty-free. New and standard engine vehicles will incur lowered fiscal duty of 5%. The fiscal import duty on new parts for motor vehicles is reduced from 15% to 5%, and fiscal duty and import duty on new engines for motor vehicles is reduced from 15% to 5%. The fiscal duty and import duty on batteries and cells used for hybrid vehicles is reduced from 32% to 5%. Taxi operators will be exempted from paying the luxury levy, which is currently $7,500 or $20,000, depending on the engine size. Taxi owners will now be able to afford and upgrade their fleets with this added incentive. And ordinary Fijians will expect a new level of modernized taxis and added comfort in terms of travel in all public service vehicles. Given these groundbreaking initiatives, which will overnight give an increased value to these permits, these PSV operators will be required to adhere to new service standard charter. This will ensure the quality and delivery of PSV services in the country is elevated to a new level. However, any breaches to the charter will lead to possible cancellation of these permits. These licenses and permits will now be transferable, which means the holders can sell their permits for a profit. We'll also lift the freeze on taxi, minibus and carrier permits from 1 January 2018. Priority and consideration will be given to applications received during the freeze period. Many people have been waiting for years for the chance to obtain a taxi license, and we want to give the priority to those who have applied since the freeze began. They need to meet certain criteria, including having an income of $20,000 or less. They may not already own a taxi permit or a taxi, minibus or carrier business. The Honourable Minister for Transport will reveal further details in the next few months. There will also be a quota system as to how many of these permits can be given based on the population numbers in that particular area. Madam Speaker, in keeping with our commitment to adapt to and fight climate change and in a push to bring newer technology to Fiji, we've now eliminated the import duty on brand new buses for operators with an annual turnover of less than $1.5 million as discussed with the RBF, Madam Speaker. These operators will pay no duty on the importation of new buses for the next 2 years. And these operators will enjoy a reduced duty of 5% for the next 2 years for reduced buses. Madam Speaker, currently the smaller bus operators have aging buses in their fleet, and with the attractive interest rates on offer, the smaller bus operators will now be able to upgrade their fleet and improve the delivery of bus services on their routes. Fiscal duty, Madam Speaker, on new parts and new engines for motor vehicles will be reduced from 15% to 5%, Madam Speaker. Duty on new and used vessels for inter-island passenger and cargo traffic and parts of those vessels will be exempted from duty. This is to ensure that Madam Speaker, that shipping services are provided adequately to those people, those Fijians who live in Fiji's maritime region. As you know, Madam Speaker, we've been working on the bus fare e-ticketing system, and the e-ticketing will be compulsory by 1 October 2017. The bus companies have confirmed that e-ticketing will virtually eliminate the pilfering of revenue by the employees. This means that the revenue for bus companies will now increase by at least 33%. The e-ticketing system will also provide live data in terms of carriage of passengers, embarkation, time and date of certain transactions, and other analytical data which assist in future development planning of a particular township or city, including census. We also intend, Madam Speaker, in time to introduce the e-ticketing system to taxis, minibuses, carriers and marine transportation in the near future, so everybody is brought within the fold, and of course FIRCA will also know how much money all of these people make. Madam Speaker, when oil prices were high, we instituted zero-rated bus fares, whereby the bus companies retained the VAT component of each fare. This was intended to help them absorb the high cost of fuel, but we expect them to remain low for the foreseeable future. Currently, bus fares on routes where bus companies compete head-to-head have already declined. For example, the regulated bus minimum fare from Nandi to Lautoka is $2.85, but the current fare charged between buses companies because they compete is $2. Accordingly, legislation will be amended to ensure that the current regulated bus fares become the maximum fares. We would like competition to benefit ordinary consumers. The Ministry of Economy, LTA and the Commerce Commission also, Madam Speaker, will review the bus fare scheme by the end of 2017. Madam Speaker, we'd like to make another major announcement as we speak about transport. We wish to address an important issue that has unfairly disadvantaged many Fijians who have suffered personal injury or death as a result of a motor vehicle accident on our roads. The current third-party insurance law, which requires all motor vehicles to have third-party insurance with an insurance company, is fraught with limitations and exclusions. As a result, many Fijians who have been victims of motor vehicle accidents have been denied compensation. As an example, an innocent pedestrian who was hit by a car was denied compensation by the insurance company simply because the driver of the vehicle did not have a driver's license or was drunk driving. Claims for compensation have also been unduly delayed with the insurance companies or in the courts, and victims of motor vehicle accidents have often waited for years to get compensation, if any. To remedy this justice, Madam Speaker, we are introducing a new law which will come into force on 1 January 2018 and will be known as the Accident Compensation Act. This new law, Madam Speaker, will establish a commission to be known as the Fiji Accident Compensation Commission and will provide for a no-fault compensation scheme through which victims of accidents will be compensated without having to prove fault or negligence. In preparing this law, Madam Speaker, which we've been working on for the past few months, we've undertaken consultations with the New Zealand Accident Compensation Corporation, known as the ACC, as well as the Reserve Bank and the Insurance Council of Fiji. We're indeed grateful to the New Zealand ACC for sharing the experience and expertise. We had sent down a team there, which has guided us in preparing this innovative compensation law for Fiji for personal injury and death. While the Insurance Council of Fiji did acknowledge that there were anomalies with the existing motor vehicle third-party insurance law, the Council's response was not in line with our vision to have an all-encompassing system which can be expanded in due course, Madam Speaker, to cover for other injuries, such as injuries or death at workplace, at schools, at tertiary institutions, as well as, Madam Speaker, in sports. Madam Speaker, from 1 January 2018, this new law will be applicable to motor vehicle accidents and will provide no-fault compensation to personal injuries and deaths arising from motor vehicle accidents. Under this new law, Madam Speaker, any person who suffers personal injury or death as a result of motor vehicle accident on our roads will be provided with a lump sum compensation in a prompt and timely manner under the no-fault scheme. Victims of motor vehicle accidents no longer have to pay large amounts of legal fees to a lawyer and then wait for years to get a compensation from the insurance company. As in New Zealand, Fijians will be able to claim compensation without a lawyer, potentially saving years of litigation and obtaining speedy justice. From 1 January 2018, owners of motor vehicles no longer have to take third-party insurance with an insurance company. A motor vehicle accident levy will instead be paid into an accident compensation fund and will be payable through the LTA. This will make LTA a one-stop shop for the payment of all motor vehicle registration costs. The Accident Compensation Fund will be administered by the Ministry of Economy and the Reserve Bank of Fiji, and which will also assist with such reinsurance arrangements as necessary. The government has allocated $1 million as seed funding for the Fiji Accident Compensation Commission in this budget, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government is further investing a total of $387.6 million in improving access to quality medical services, an increase of more than $100 million. First priority is to recruit 200 additional nurses and 350 doctors. This is a significant investment, Madam Speaker, towards improving medical services to internationally accepted levels. The hiring of doctors will be done in 3 tranches, Madam Speaker. First, 44 specialists will be recruited for divisional, subdivisional and specialist hospitals. In the second tranche, 143 doctors will be recruited for the frontline and operational services. These positions have already been advertised. The remaining 163 doctors will be recruited in the third tranche. Around $59 million has been allocated for doctors' salaries. A total of $32.5 million is provided for the purchase of drugs, consumables and vaccines, and an additional $5.3 million for laboratories. Madam Speaker, a sum of $47.8 million is to upgrade, extend and maintain existing health facilities, build new facilities and equip all these facilities. We have further funded, Madam Speaker, a customer care center with a toll-free number 157 that people can call with comments, complaints or compliments about the treatment in our health facilities. And we are keen to extend, Madam Speaker, the services of such a center for other ministries that directly serve large numbers of people. Madam Speaker, government is working with the International Finance Corporation to expand the range of services at Lautoka Hospital and Bar Hospital through a public-private partnership. Their current plans for the hospitals will bring them up to full international standards, and government will seek bids with the assistance of ISC and the Indian government for an international hospital company to run the hospitals and provide enhanced tertiary care facilities. Indeed, the Indian government, we'd like to acknowledge them, has also given an undertaking when he met our Honourable Prime Minister, Prime Minister Modi met our Honourable Prime Minister in Fiji, to also provide state-of-the-art equipment for this public-private partnership. We expect to select the partner and sign the agreement by February of 2018. Government will continue to subsidize costs for low-income earners at these hospitals, Madam Speaker. We will allocate, Madam Speaker, $1 million to establish and equip the National Kidney Research and Treatment Center in Suva, to be directed by Dr. Amrish Krishnan, the only Fijian nephrologist in Fiji. This treatment and research center will advance the treatment of kidney disease in Fiji by operating 10 new kidney dialysis machines and offering a range of other therapies as well as diagnostics and counseling to its patients. 4 new kidney dialysis machines will also become operational in the Lautoka Hospital in the next few months. And Madam Speaker, we are extending the concern for good health to the workplace. One of the significant measures in this budget is to provide fringe benefit tax exemption to employers who provide medical insurance to their employees. As our population grows, Madam Speaker, it is important that our cities and towns are well planned, sustainable and cater for the future. Therefore, the total funding on the Challenge and Investment Fund available to the town and city councils have been increased to $4.7 million. Furthermore, around $2 million is allocated for the construction of the Langere market. Government is also providing $2.6 million for the construction of the new Namaka market. Madam Speaker, to complement this, government is also continuing to decentralize market services. We will be constructing 8 new mini markets within the suburbs of the major urban centers in Suva, in Lautoka, and Nandi. And we have allocated $960,000 in the budget for this. Of course, it also reduces the carbon footprint. We all don't have to go to one centralized market. We can also should be able to shop within our own suburbs. Government is also piloting a new project through the Ministry of Industry and Trade to develop standardized roadside stalls outside the municipalities. An initial funding of $500,000 is provided to develop 50 semi-permanent and 30 portable roadside stalls. Madam Speaker, government is also funding a number of projects in the various municipalities. For example, $2.2 million is provided for the redevelopment of the stadium at Govind Park in Ba to international standards. For Lautoka, $3 million is allocated for the Botanical Garden public swimming pool and $1 million for new indoor sporting facility at Churchill Park. There is no indoor facility in the West that is of any standard measure. Madam Speaker, $1 million is also allocated for the construction of a new public swimming pool in Nasino. Nasino, Madam Speaker, is the largest populated municipality in Fiji. A further $850,000 is provided for initial works for the construction of Valilevu Sports Stadium. An increased funding of $5.6 million is provided for the new town development in Nambuwalu. Madam Speaker, we have increased the allowances for Turangani Koros and district advisory councils by 15%. However, Madam Speaker, it is critical to note that all Turangani Koros and district advisory councils will be subject to strict scrutiny of their performance. They all need to perform. Madam Speaker, government has embarked on a project to construct funeral rites facilities where families can perform final rites and lay their beloved ones to rest with dignity and in relative comfort and safety. The construction of the first facility in Batuanga has already commenced, and government has allocated $1 million to construct 3 more facilities in Lautoka, Lambasa, and Nosori with the inclusion of guest crematoriums where appropriate. Madam Speaker, government is providing an increased marketing grant of $33.6 million to Tourism Fiji for direct marketing costs and rebranding. This grant to Tourism Fiji over the years has paid handsome dividends in promoting Fiji as a tourism destination. One of the most important markets for tourist destinations, one of the most important markets for tourist destinations is what is called as the MICE market, which stands for Meetings, Incentives, Conferences and Exhibition. We want to compete in that market in a very substantive manner. And FMP's future convention center in Momi Bay will provide us the facility to host large groups like the Asian Development Bank annual meeting in 2019. Fiji will be the first Pacific Island country to host this event, which had 5,000 participants in Yokohama this year. We have allocated, Madam Speaker, $4 million in the budget for preparatory works for the hosting of the convention under Head 50. Madam Speaker, the FNPF will build a state-of-the-art modern-day convention center with a capacity of 4,000 at a cost of $90 million. Of course, Madam Speaker, this new facility would be able to host major domestic, regional, and international events, including sporting events, including music concerts. To complement this investment, Madam Speaker, government has decided to grant an exclusive casino license to the FNPF to construct a new casino near the convention center that will draw tourists and convention visitors. The casino would then support the members of the fund, and the FNPF will further diversify its portfolio and pull in higher returns for its 340,000 members, the ordinary workers of Fiji, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the Ministry of Agriculture budget is $86.3 million to support extension services, research, product development, farm support, policy, planning and statistics, and infrastructure improvement, an increase of $4 million, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government will continue with programs for export promotion, food security, rice revitalization, and coconut development, and with additional programs to increase production of cocoa, vanilla, dalo, yangona, and potato. These will have a budget of around $12.3 million, including $2.5 million for farm access roads, agricultural extension services, and other area-based programs. Madam Speaker, we'd also like to announce that government is very closely working with the RBF for a new and innovative project to explore the introduction of crop insurance in Fiji. In this regard, we are evaluating the Indian model of crop insurance where the farmer and the government would share the premium cost for agricultural crops such as sugarcane, rice, dalo, yangona, ginger and vegetables. $350,000 has been allocated for these purposes in the budget. Currently, some actuarial studies will commence in the next few weeks in this respect. Madam Speaker, in addition to sugarcane, agriculture and tourism, we also need to build up our manufacturing sector and encourage investment in the production of high-quality finished goods and components with significant value added. So we have allocated $8 million to establish a manufacturing and services zone in Warambitia, Lautoka. The zone will target investments from leading ICT, manufacturing, supply chain management, and other medium to large-scale firms, and is expected to create employment opportunities for over 5,000 Fijians once it is fully operational. This is one way to create higher skilled jobs and a more diversified economy, Madam Speaker. The reason why it is in Warambitya, Madam Speaker, because these companies require access to an international airport and of course to a seaport, and of course Warambitya fits that scenario. Madam Speaker, Fiji is well located to provide finished goods and become part of the supply chain of manufacturers in Asia, Australia, and perhaps even the Americas. We are working closely with IFC in this project, and there's extremely strong interest in this project by some of the larger economies in the region. Indeed, the Minister of Industry and Trade was in New Zealand only about a week and a half ago, and there's very keen interest in respect to this project. Madam Speaker, the Fijian Constitution states that the elected government must serve a term of no less than 3.5 years and no more than 4 years. This means, Madam Speaker, that elections can take place between May and November 2018, which would put them either in the 2017, 2018 or 2018-2019 fiscal year. The total cost of holding the elections is $31.4 million, Madam Speaker. However, Madam Speaker, given that the elections can be held in either 2018-2019 fiscal year, only $22.1 million will be allocated to the Fijian Elections Office to prepare for the elections. The balance of $9.3 million will only be released in the 2017-2018 fiscal year if elections are held before August 2018. Should it not be, then it will be allocated for the 2018-2019 fiscal year. In the same vein, Madam Speaker, police will receive a further $1.6 million in Head 50 for operations during the elections. Should it be required in this financial year, the upcoming 2017-2018 fiscal year, then it will be deployed. Otherwise, it will be allocated in the 2018-2019 budget year, because the elections can be held post-August of 2018. Madam Speaker, a police force is critical to maintain law and order and safety of all Fijians, and government has been continuously investing in our police. The Fiji Police Force has a budget of $148.8 million, an increase of $17 million. We are allocating additional funds to equip the force with radio systems and forensics equipment. Also, Madam Speaker, as previously announced, we will give the police force new motor vehicles, 230 automobiles of different types, and 150 new motorcycles, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, mobility is essential for police force to protect citizens, control traffic, and respond quickly to crimes, threats, calls for assistance, and natural disasters. These vehicles will provide that mobility, Madam Speaker. To be effective, Madam Speaker, a professional police force also needs to maintain high standards of behavior and adherence to procedure. The public needs to understand that the people who enforce the law will be subject to the law also. Therefore, government is providing funding to strengthen the capacity of the Fiji Police Force to conduct more internal investigations and a lot more professionally. $150,000 has been allocated for this function. Madam Speaker, job evaluation exercises were carried out for the correction services, the Fiji military forces, and the Fiji Police Force. But the changes have not been implemented yet for the Fiji Police Force. The RFMF and the Fiji Correction Services had the JEE fully implemented. The evaluation for the police force, Madam Speaker, will now be fully implemented from 1st of August 2017, and the salaries of all the discipline forces will now then be aligned. The Fiji Police Force will have an overall increase in salaries. $15.5 million is allocated for this, Madam Speaker. The base salary increases will range from 11.5% to 20.5%, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government has allocated around $17.5 million for the completion of the cable connection project to Vanua level. This will double broadband capacity and speed to our fellow Fijians in the Northern Division. Madam Speaker, as communicated here in Parliament, the wireless platform is expected to supersede the current analog coverage by the end of December of this year. Access to free-to-air television will be expanded, and places like Bua, the interior of Ra, and our maritime islands, including Lau, Esawa, and Rotuma, will all have access. We will achieve this through the use of both terrestrial and satellite technology to extend coverage to the very remote areas of Fiji, Madam Speaker. FIRCA and FNPF are two of the government agencies that will participate in our program to move government services to digital platforms to make them more efficient and easier for people to access. We've already partnered with the Singaporean government through one of our agencies to make this a reality, and we'll be rolling out mobile applications on government services over the next 6 to 9 months, and we'll be sharing this cost with FNPF and FIRCA. Madam Speaker, all of these announcements made in respect of the various allocations, and indeed the others that we have not announced but will actually be accommodated in the budget, every one of these projects, these programs and responsibilities funded through this budget need to be implemented by a strong civil service. We need to deliver the level of service that all Fijians rightly deserve. We have discussed this many times in Parliament, and it has been a priority project for government for the past 2 years. The reforms focus on ensuring that the civil service upholds the values and principles in the Constitution in an environment that is free from corruption and upholds the highest standards of accountability, particularly with regard to public financial management. To achieve this, we are building the foundations of strong people management. We first introduced the principle of open merit for selection of staff at all levels. We are now working on improving the working environment through changes in management practices and in the way we supervise and institute discipline where necessary. The next stage, Madam Speaker, is to overhaul our remuneration system, benchmarking to the private sector and ensuring fair pay for all of our workers. Madam Speaker, as we have announced previously, we are not simply applying an increase across the board at the same rate for everyone. We are pleased to announce, Madam Speaker, a fundamental change to the way remuneration is structured in the civil service. We are applying for international best practice, introducing 15 broadband bands for salaries and wages, which will cover all workers. The job evaluation that has been undertaken since April of this year is confirming the band for each position. The band then determines the salary for the people in these positions. Madam Speaker, we are pleased to announce that our government wage earners will receive an average increase of 14.3%. Our research shows that we already pay above the private sector for these jobs, but as a responsible employer, we are setting the bar higher. These positions include our drivers, our chainmen, our tradespeople, and other similar occupations. For our common cadre, Madam Speaker, those that are in the headquarters of ministries, the average increase is 15.8%. Again, Madam Speaker, the actual increases will vary from position to position, as these jobs include administration, accounting, audit, procurement, and supplies, and the extent to which we have already matched the private sector varies across these professions. The increased salaries for these positions will commence in July. We would like to highlight that some of the highest increases are in our service delivery areas. One example is in the nursing field. Through the changes in the remuneration structure, we are able to announce recognition for specialist nurses, those who work in areas of higher risk and therefore require higher qualifications, training, and application of skill on the job. From August, Madam Speaker, these nurses will be recognized through the creation of 800 specialist nursing positions, attracting salaries of up to a 25% increase above the general nursing positions. These include the specialization of coronary care specialists, intensive care specialists, and midwives, to name just a few. We'd also like to mention, Madam Speaker, the valued nurse practitioners have been recognized through this process. This very special group of nurses will receive salary increases of up to 74% in recognition of the special role they perform in the care of our citizens, particularly in the rural and remote areas. Our teachers will also receive significant increases in salary. The job evaluation for these positions were completed only last week, and we are pleased to announce that the average increase for our qualified teachers is 14.3%, and for our school heads and administrators is 13.8%. Broad bending of these positions will mean less movement of people and less change in school administrators. These salary increases will be effective from August 2017. In recognition of the need for ongoing professional development, teachers will be required to be on duty for additional 7 days. These student-free days, which will be before each term at the school and district level, to ensure that our teachers have the skills and knowledge they need to teach for new curricula and provide the best possible outcomes for our children. Madam Speaker, we are obviously not going to pay such large increases without expecting improvements in effectiveness and service delivery to the Fijian people. Some of our positions, those where the increase is greater than 15%, will of course have to be advertised. We are committed, Madam Speaker, to developing a high-performing civil service that is an attractive option for young and highly skilled people from all areas of our society. We actively encourage all qualified people to apply for jobs in the civil service, from both outside the service and within the service, and have been very pleased to see increasing numbers of women appointed to technical and senior roles as the open merit system has created these opportunities, Madam Speaker. We further confirm that these changes to remuneration are not the end. We are working on the performance management guideline, which will include the principles and procedures for rewarding our high performers. This system will also confirm the standards to be met for any contract renewals. As always, Madam Speaker, the focus of the reforms is on creating a high-performing civil service that provides high-quality, effective, and timely service to our people. This is why our investment, Madam Speaker, in these reforms is so critical, with an eye on the outcomes for our people. The unions would like to see everybody get a generous pay rise based on the mere fact that they are employed. But shouldn't the person who's scrupulously honest, works hard, reports to work on time, serves the public well, and gives sound support to his or her minister will be rewarded before the person who shirks responsibility and goes through the motions of working? We think so, Madam Speaker. A high performer must be rewarded. We do not want people who start combing their hair at 4 o'clock to leave work at 4:30 to be rewarded the same way in terms of performance systems as those who actually stay back and work. So we must take care, Madam Speaker, that the civil service will never become a repository for people who think a position and a pay rise are acquired lifetime rights. People who perform well will get rewarded, and government has its own responsibility too. If we demand professionalism, we must establish a professional work environment, one that inspires pride. If you look, Madam Speaker, around us, you will see that our government facilities are improving every day, becoming more attractive and better equipped. We are drawing in an outstanding young people through a merit system and a large number of women. It's all part of the civil service reform, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, in an extremely significant move, we will raise the income threshold from $16,000, Madam Speaker, to $30,000, which will remove the burden of taxation. Madam Speaker, immediately for 14,500 Fijians. We raised the tax threshold in stages from $8,840 to $16,000 beginning in 2007. And this latest change, Madam Speaker, will make life easier for many more people who work hard every day to support their families and create some personal wealth. In fact, Madam Speaker, some 85,000 Fijians in the formal sector alone will now no longer pay any income tax. But even more significantly, Madam Speaker, this is a tax cut for every Fijian, with the first $30,000 of every Fijian's income will be tax-free. That means more money in the pockets of ordinary people, Madam Speaker. For example, Madam Speaker, to put into perspective, a teacher with an annual salary of $21,438 a year was paying an income tax of around $381. So the real take-home salary was only $21,057. Under our civil service reforms, that teacher's salary rises to $24,261. And if the income tax threshold were to remain, she would pay $827, Madam Speaker, as tax. But now that we raise the threshold, Madam Speaker, not only does the teacher get a rise, she also does not pay income tax for the total take-home amount of $24,261, a real increase of $3,204, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, the duty on some everyday items that people buy have been reduced. For example, energy bars are reduced from 32% to 5%, ready-made towels from 32% to 15%, baby cots and shoes from 32% to 5% to help our young families, canned sardines from 32% to 15%, baby wipes from 32% to 0%, steel and aluminium louver frames from 32% to 5%. These are some of the reductions we made, Madam Speaker, and I'm highlighting only some of them. Madam Speaker, excise on cigarettes, tobacco and alcohol will of course increase by 15%. Excise tax on sweetened and carbonated drinks will also increase by 15% from 30 cents per litre to 35 cents per litre. Madam Speaker, in another significant move, Madam Speaker, all taxation of dividends, currently at 3% for residents and 9% for non-residents, has been abolished to encourage investment. However, any effort to evade taxation by disguising taxable income as dividend income will constitute a tax offence and will be punishable by a severe fine or criminal prosecution, Madam Speaker. This basically means, Madam Speaker, the tax rate of 20% is the true tax rate. To address the issue of dividend tax applying to the distribution of company profits prior to 2014, a 1% transitional tax will be levied on pre-2014 earnings balances as of 29 June 2017. There will be a 3-month window guaranteed to complete the payment of this transitional tax until 30th December 2017, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, government has allocated a total operating budget of $53.7 million to FIRCA, an increase of $10.7 million. We are equipping FIRCA with all the necessary resources to better collect taxes, clamp down on non-compliance and tax cheaters, and protect our borders more effectively. FIRCA employees have received a pay rise of an average of 24%, which brings the pay in line with the private sector, where there is a great demand for people with the skills and experience of our FIRCA staff and recognizing the special skill sets. FIRCA has also been given funding to conduct a salary and wage review for its employees, Madam Speaker, to continue with this particular program, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, those FIRCA officials at the border have also received significant pay rises. In other words, custom officers who are actually the border and they actually look at goods coming to Fiji receive a pay rise of almost 50%. Madam Speaker, we will introduce a series of measures in this budget to improve tax compliance. The Anti-Avoidance Provision of the Income Tax Act will be amended to capture all types and all levels of tax arrangements. The Customs Act will be amended to shift the burden of proof to the importer on all offences, Madam Speaker. The FIRCA Act will also be amended to allow it to share information more easily with the Fiji Commerce Commission in monitoring prices, and for FIRCA to effectively issue infringement notices to traders who do not pass reduced duty to consumers, Madam Speaker. The focus of this budget for FIRCA is to simplify tax administration in Fiji and create a climate of customer service. The name of Fiji Revenue and Customs Authority will also be changed, Madam Speaker, to Fiji Revenue and Customs Service, as a constant reminder to the FIRCA officials that we work for the Fijian people. A hotline will be available from 1 July for citizens or staff to register complaints and report fraud, abuse and non-compliance with the law. Finally, Madam Speaker, in conclusion, we are very proud of this budget, but we are even more proud of our ability as a government to address the needs of our society across the board. We are proud that we can guarantee opportunity and improve living standards, show compassion, Madam Speaker, ensure fairness and justice, keep order and help people lead rewarding and productive lives. This is what courageous leadership and sound economic management can do, Madam Speaker. That is why we are in government, Madam Speaker. A budget is never just about dollars in and dollars out. It is also not just about living for the moment. Neither is it about trying to win votes. It is one in a series of interrelated blueprints for realizing our ambitions for today and giving our children optimism for the future. It is a job that is never complete, but each year, Madam Speaker, brings us the joy of knowing that we've done better than the previous year. We have remained true to our convictions, Madam Speaker, and kept our promises, even when it was difficult. True leadership, Madam Speaker, is inspiring an entire nation. Because our leader kept the nation's eye fixed on the rewards that came when a government patiently and firmly carries out a well-conceived plan of action, Madam Speaker. We know we have the vision, the means and the leadership to unlock our economic potential for good, Madam Speaker. And that is why, Madam Speaker, we came into government, and that is why, Madam Speaker, we are here presenting this budget. And with those few words, Madam Speaker, I recommend this budget to this Parliament. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Well, there you have it. I think Professor Kumar was just beginning to comment earlier on. I heard him say expansionary, so I think I'll allow him to expand on his comments right now. So generally we'll take general comments from the panel, and then we'll go specifically into what we have recorded as being the specific areas where initiatives have been granted. And those other areas where it would have, it would cost, Fiji as a community and the business community at large in a much greater way. So I give the mic now to Professor Kumar to continue where he left off.
Thank you, Chair. I started with the issue of expansionary budget. I can truly, I believe that this is truly an election budget. A lot of goodies have been handed out, though we don't have the details, but we feel happy for the civil servants. They're being given a substantial rise, but I think this rise that we have seen in pay to the civil servants is actually something long overdue. It should have happened over a period of time, probably 3 or 4 years prior to this. So the government is, I guess, hoodwinking. I think this is vote buying. The minister can deny that, the government can deny that, but this is something long overdue. It should have happened in I would say, drips and drabs, in a way that in this last few years, the civil servants would have been more motivated to work, and this performance issue that is being addressed now through measures should have been taken long before. And I think a lot of diligence should have been put in place to address the civil servants, not the way it is being done in the election year. Apart from that, I think the details of the receipt side, the revenue side has not been provided. And I think the devil is in the details, and we will have to examine the budget more carefully. I see there a 10% environmental levy, and I think it would be broadly applied. That is where I think the government is seeing some amount of added revenue. And compliance, I think the minister has been harping on it for long. While everybody would want to see businesses and everybody complying to the tax laws, how stringently we are going to apply it, it's a matter of concern, I would say. We would not want to see small and medium-sized businesses being punished or excessive fines placed on them. We have seen this trend increasing over the years under this government. In reality, if you see what is happening to small and medium enterprises, there is a substantial reduction in these kinds of businesses, which often benefit the lower end of our society. The people who are at the lower end of the society would be able to, freely enter into enterprise, gain experience, in business and so on. Although there are measures being taken, you cannot create entrepreneurship, through government enforcement. You need to, provide the empowerment, the processes through which ordinary people would find business or entering into small business more lucrative and beneficial to them and their families. And that creativity that has been talked about makes sense, but I think this should have happened before, and I think there should be more detailed approach to this. I think the health sector, although there has been measures in place about recruiting, we would want to see that being realized. We have talked about better health facilities, but whether we would really see better system arising from this is something we are not sure of. On the social services, social welfare, the increases are welcome. We would want to see very ordinary, downtrodden people benefiting from the allocations that are there. But how these allocations are actually disbursed, what kind of policies are being placed, that would be also something to be seen. I have said that it is an expansionary budget and it is an election year budget. You can see lots of allowance increase for students. We welcome that, but whether it would transform into quality education is a big question. We would not want to see students actually getting distracted because of lots of money coming into their hands. I think there's some sense of responsibility that needs to be observed and how it happens. I will have to look at the details, really, to be able to make further comments. But as the discussion, moves forward, I would probably be able to pick some more and say, add to this. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Kumar. I'll give the mic now to Lorraine. Lorraine, in the pre-budget session, I remember you saying clearly for government to come away from the traditional general budget, general allocation in the general areas where expenditure would be incurred, and target it more, to the community groupings where the funding from government under the budget would really help to alleviate, and use the difficulties, faced by certain groups of citizens in the nation. So I would like to maybe just ask you, your take in terms of the budget, whatever you heard and mentioned about retirees, pension schemes. There's a lot of announcement about FNPF reinvesting in different places, even FNPF owning a casino, and we might come to that later on. So have you heard from the budget today what you would like to hear for retirees?
My wish tonight was to be surprised and for the budget to be a real budget, which means for the people. For the needs of the people and not the needs of the government. But truly, I'm actually quite shocked at all the increases in the budget allocation. I mean, let's look at 964 million in education, 22 million Fiji Elections Office, Ministry for Health, 387 million. And you're looking at a big increase. So maybe that's why we have a 4.5% deficit. But for the Ministry for Women, the budget actually increased by 100%, which is really good. The pensions for retirees at the age of 65 years and over increased by 8 million, which came to a total of about 32 million. The point here is the retiring age is still at 55, but the pensions are paid out at the age of 65 years and over. So there's still like a 10-year gap. So whether the 8 million is a good amount or not, it's to be seen. The worry here is disability was given allowances. Nothing mentioned about the aging population. For me personally, the aging population is actually a marginalized population which takes up about a fifth of the total population as at the end of last year. Nothing was mentioned about allowances for the aging population. Another worry I had was the 13,000 income threshold. That's good, that's very good. But the thing is, the budget is, the government depends on taxes. And when the budget increases, we've got to get our income from somewhere. And at the beginning of the minister's speech, if I was correct, he quickly mentioned social responsibility tax will increase. Now, social SRT is actually a tax on wages and salary. So the bulk of the tax burden will go on high income earners, which most of us think it's a good idea. But I'm shocked. I'm shocked and I'm excited. And if it's an elections vote, what's the name for the budget, then so be it. But the thing is, we've got to note that it's just a budget. The actuals need to be compared to the budget. So you have a budget that's passed through Parliament, everyone is happy, but it's how much you spend that needs to be compared to the budget. But like Dr. said, we need to look at the budget more closely in detail. Ministry for Women increase, there was a mention of the 10 cents tax on plastic bags. I was a bit confused at that because that's going to be hard to monitor and hard to tax as well. But I'm actually quite happy, but I'm skeptical at the same time too. I'm hoping that the budget can be more defined through gender, through age, so we know where the disparity is. But for now, I'm actually a bit shocked at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Lorraine, for that comment. I'll give the mic now to Apenisa, who is our youth rep. Apenisa, there's a significant rise in terms of toppers and tells by about $70 million. 115 million, I believe, currently, and $194 million. Now, I'm relating here to the reasoning behind the increase in this allocation as given by the minister, and I know Sunil here has spoken a word of caution in terms of throwing so much money in the hands of the youth and university students, and it could well be a distraction. So we would just like to hear your comments on it, given your current status as a student at USP, and your take of the allocations for toppers and tells, and what the minister said.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I'd like to state it's very interesting that in this budget there was no mention of the military budget at all. None. It's either it's increasing, decreasing, or staying the same. We don't know. However, I welcome the increase in the higher education budget given by the minister, especially the $964.5 million budgetary allocation concerning education. The tertiary and toppers loan scheme will be receiving about the toppers in itself will be receiving about 32.3 million, but the number of people who are on toppers stay the same. The 600 above 300 students who have above 300 who receive toppers every year. So the question is, where does that money go? Again, responsibility as mentioned by the doctor earlier. Will this money go into actually helping students get through studies, or will it go clubs, whatever youth are interested in these days? Again, it has to look at if the government has really planned this out, or it's just, or what some may have mentioned, a vote-buying tactic. But we have to see how it goes. We shouldn't, at this moment, start criticizing it too much. It may be for good, it may not be, but at this moment, the information that we have received is not enough for us to make any judgments at all. So I leave my comments there until we receive a full budget allocations. We cannot make much of comments, but I'd say that the increase will be welcomed by students. They will welcome it. However, it must be approached with caution. It must be approached with caution. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa, for those comments. I'm sure we all share the same sentiments, because the minister was reading the budget at 100 miles an hour, and was not sure whether that was actually part of the strategy to try and sort of ride over the potholes and the heaps on the road. And if that was the plan, he probably did a good work at it. And
marvelous.
And I'm sure you're not the only one that captured the fact that the RFMF budget on this particular occasion has been omitted to a certain degree, and for reasons best known to the minister. But we will come to that later. At this point in time, I'll give the mic to Professor Naidu. I'm sure he's very keen to share his comments on it. Perhaps, whilst you're making your comments here, Professor, if you could spend some time. We've heard, I think, 95% of that budget speech is where the money is going, where government is spending. I heard it's only $80 million going to agriculture. There's an expansionary approach on markets in the municipalities and the markets on the road. It's talking about only extension programs. I have not read or heard anything that would suggest to me that there is a significant initiative in the areas of agriculture, where a significant portion of our population depend for their livelihood. Now, okay, I recognize the fact that that this is only really the macro, with the details yet to follow. But Professor Naidu, I know you have a lot of things you want to raise, but perhaps to a certain degree, concentrate on whether there is enough in the budget to suggest, where the money is coming from at the end of the day for the initiatives that have been, raised. And then perhaps then later on I would, maybe here, Sunil, you might want to get ready, because I want to talk about the issues of employment creation and cost of living, and the issue of VAT, which really has not been reduced or reviewed at this stage. So I'll give the mic now to Professor Naidu.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to start by saying that this is indeed an election budget, and that one has to give some credence to the the capacity of the Minister of Economy in terms of his ability to be a demagogue. He spoke extremely well. He might have gone fast, but extremely well. I was very impressed by his powerful presentation. And I suspect that ordinary citizens of this country would actually have found the same. And in fact, Lorraine said a little bit to that effect. But, one has to actually go underneath the rhetoric, because his job is to talk up government and say all the good things that government has done, and what they intend to do. But I just wanted to pick up a couple of points before I come to the agriculture one. One of the issues he mentioned was that this government works along development plans, with development plans. Now, he thinks that this country is full of people who have collective amnesia. We actually have development plans, in the colonial and post-colonial period. Many of you will remember DP7, DP8, So what is this, And in terms of looking ahead and where we're going, it is important for us as an economy to try and diversify as much as possible. So that aspect has not been talked about too much. He mentioned SMEs and the Wairambatiya manufacturing zone, and where Fiji can be in the supply chain. But, we need more concrete examples of economic diversification. And this brings me to the business about 86 million being allocated for agriculture. Now, agriculture is very critical for all of us, and he did mention, elements in it like food security and so on. But, and I'm glad that, our young panelists raised the issue of the military, because if you looked at the military budget last year, we didn't mention it this year, They had about 96 million allocated to the military, plus another 78 million for peacekeeping. Now you add the two, we're looking at about 160 million, and I suspect that nothing has changed with regards to the budget allocation to the military this year. And yet, this very significant part of the economy, agricultural sector, which is a very complex sector with many different dimensions and crops and livestock and challenges regarding climate change, is not really, given the allocation that it deserves. But one of the things that I'm very, very delighted about, and which I actually talked about when we had the pre-budget session, was about the fact that the farmers took all the risks. And when they suffered, from natural disasters or commodity price changes, there was no support for them. So this idea of insuring crops and etc., I'm all for it. This business about FNPF contributing to the MOMI Convention Center and the casino, my question would be whether the FNPF board makes this decision, or it's a decision made by the Minister of Economy. It's a governance issue. And I think, for us who are FNPF members, it's a critical issue because we want transparency in decision making, and that there could have been some discussion ahead of this declaration, and I'm somewhat concerned about that. I mentioned at our pre-budget discussion about the importance of housing. And what I see in the minister's, address regarding housing in the budget, there was no mention whatsoever about social housing. Social housing as in affordable housing for the poor. Instead, he talked about, market-oriented solution. Lower interest rates, people with, $30,000 incomes or $50,000 incomes being able to access lower interest rates. But what about people who have much lower income than that? People who are earning less than $20,000 a year. What happens to them? And he labels this kind of social housing as ghetto housing. Now, there are solutions to that. You could have, mixed housing with different price ranges, but you can't escape the fact that a very large segment of our population are living in informal housing, in substandard housing that requires, public expenditure in terms of social housing to address that issue. Chair, I don't want to hog this thing. I'd like to say that I'm impressed by the amount allocated to education and training. That's good. But it's not clear to me how much is being allocated to out-of-school youth. And what we had was formal sector aspects in education. So what you had there was toppers and tails, but not really, details relating to TVET education, multiple entries and access regarding flexible education. I didn't see that. I am generally impressed with the social protection measures that have been put forward. There was some reference, Lorraine, to the elderly as in a significant increase on people who are in social pension. But those of us who have got lowered FNPF pension, we are not counted. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Naidu. At this point, I would like to involve our audience in the house tonight, and just giving our panelists a bit of a break. We have the mic here, and you would have sort of followed the line of questions that I have already directed to the panel. You have the choice of making a comment on the budget or raising a question to the panelists here tonight. So please raise your hand so that I can recognize you in the crowd. Singh.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President, Chair. Thank you firstly for inviting me to this discussion. And I want to speak as a unionist this evening. I think we've heard what the minister thought were very good announcements for workers, for the labor market. I heard nothing more than wage increases for public servants. And of course, a measly increase for the unskilled workers. Now, the unskilled workers issue, if we start from that, the issue has been under some public discussion for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and what we've seen is the minister confirming that the $2.32 minimum wage for unskilled workers is now going to rise to $2.68, which we had known about earlier. And we also know that the unions and the workers have already rejected that kind of increase, because what it does is it gives the unskilled and the poorest workers of our country no more than $107 gross for a 40-hour week. And if we subtract it from the 10% FNPF contribution, these workers will end up earning around $95, $96 a week for a 40-hour week. And I think we'll all agree in the House that does nothing to put food on the table. Leave alone the ability to provide housing and better clothing and medicine and other needs for their families. So I think this falls far short of what would be required, given that the basic poverty line is around $180, $185. The suggestion and the earlier promises made by other organizations, including your party, for increase up to $5 an hour, which would earn someone around in a family around $200 a week. I think that is a more realistic figure that we ought to look at, and I think the public and the workers generally are looking towards that. Coming to the public sector wage increases, I heard about the around 14% increase for hourly paid workers, the drivers, the wage earners, the chainmen and so forth. The generally around 15% for police, who got nothing for many years. And generally around 14 to 15% for teachers and also the public servants. Now that falls far short if one was to compare that with the amount of increases the public servants have had in the recent years, in the last 5 years or so, and also compared to the pay cuts that they've had to suffer as a result of the military interventions that we've had over the years. Now, I know, and this is within my personal knowledge, that the public sector unions, the Confederation, had filed a pay claim for 15% pay increase backdated to 1st of January 2015. And that claim is still pending. So this increase that's been now announced going forward from August or July falls far short of that. And it also denies public servants their claim, which would have been otherwise given to them through their own collective bargaining process and backdated to at least 18 months. So that falls far short. The increases that have been given to specialist workers, such as nurses, I mean, that is well earned in the sense that those workers have been doing work of higher skills and higher caliber, and additional pay is required for them. So there is no additional increase for those workers. It is recognizing those skills, and I don't know, because unless you see the job evaluation figures and recommendations, one would not be able to fully understand what is the basis of those increases. So these increases that are being given are they do not come even halfway meeting the losses that the public servants have incurred. But this is not enough, and I think one has to understand very clearly that public servants today are unable to even go and buy things on hire purchase from courts or other hire purchase houses, or to go to banks to obtain loans, to secure loans for housing. And this is all because of the silly employment system of fixed term contracts. And fixed term contracts, we know, for public servants is from ranging anything between 1 year to 3 years. That is not good enough an employment tenure for workers to be able to obtain loans for housing. A similar thing for housing also remains a problem for workers in the lowest paid category. If one was to see settlements like Wanda Madamu, Muslim League, Nakelo, Jittu Estate, and many other such settlements of ours, which we commonly known as squatter settlements, most of the unskilled workers live in those settlements. If they are being given $2.68 minimum wage, they were already not paying any taxes, so they aren't going to benefit from the increase in the tax threshold. And because we don't know the income measures of the government, we don't know what other forms of indirect taxes that they'll be paying. So we don't know what the actual cost will be, despite the increase, the measly increase that's been given. And because, as Professor Naidu said, there's no announcement about social housing. We can't see any improvement in their lives in any time in the near future. So these are the major issues, I think, Chair, that we need to keep in mind. Without fixing these issues, without fixing the contract employment structure in the public service, we are not going to secure employment of individuals. I am a very strong advocate for permanent employment for anyone who is in formal employment. Everyone has a right to formal employment, a permanent employment, and that permanent employment should only be cut short by cause. In other words, someone doing something grossly wrong to be able to be removed from one's job, and that's what our law says as well. Our law says that one can't be dismissed except for serious misconduct. That's only when somebody dismissal applies. So these contracts, system of employment, fixed term contract, it has taken away the security of employment from workers in the public service, and as long as the employment of public servants remains insecure, it remains unstable, as long as they continue to remain unable to obtain loans for housing and loans to improve their living standards, their service delivery will not improve, because they're forever living in fear of losing job, forever living in fear, forever living wanting to make their bosses happy to be able to secure their jobs. So these are things that are all wrong. I have also seen, Chair, in the last week, in the last few days, a Ministry of Education circular asking teachers to pre-sign a contract renewal without the circular telling them what the increase in wages would be. Now, we heard when the question was asked to Minister of Economy in Parliament, I think whether the last Parliament or the previous sitting, that on a question of civil service reform, he answered that around 20-25% of public servants are still on tenured employment. Now these are employees who have chosen not to go on contract by choosing not to apply for other vacant positions. So therefore they remain on their earlier contract. What this Public Service Ministry of Employment circular has now said, and I am told by Confederation of Public Sector Unions that similar circulars have been issued to public servants as well, that those who are on tenured employment, permanent employment, if they wanted to get this pay increase, whatever's been offered, as low as it is, then they had to sign up for 5-year contracts that are being offered. Now that's what the minister hasn't very cunningly announced. Right? He hasn't announced that. So teachers or public servants who are on permanent employment now, they are required to sign up on a 5-year contract to be able to get this 15 or 14% pay increase. If they don't, then they can remain on wherever they are, but they don't get the pay rises either. These are things the minister has announced. And I have got personal knowledge of this because I've seen these documents and I helped the public sector unions draft the objections to it. So these things have already been objected to. I know that yesterday the public sector unions issued a demand of 25% pay rise. Compared to that demand, the increase given of 15% falls at least 10% short of that as well. So, Chair and panelists, these would be my initial comments on the worker side, and I can't see these bringing any kind of improvement to the lives of the workers in the country, and very little, if any, in the improvement of service delivery as the minister envisages. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Attar Singh, for accepting our invitation to come here today to share your comments and very, very fruitful, fruitful comments in the sense that I think even before, we were sort of very, very reserved in the way that we want to, positively comment on the budget because we do not know the details. But I think what really is not a surprise, because the surprise in the details really has actually come out before the announcement was made. So we thank Mr. Attar Singh for that. So, ladies and gentlemen, I take this opportunity also to welcome to the panel tonight honourable members of Parliament, the honourable leader of NFP, Professor Biman Prasad. Honorable Chand, welcome you, and also to Honorable Singh, sorry, I beg your pardon. It seems that we've all been bombarded with, we keep stop remembering names, but I welcome you, and we welcome you to this forum tonight, and we wait eagerly for your comments in terms of what you heard in Parliament, and we were watching it live here on live stream as well. So we'll start I'll give the mic to the party leader. I know he's going to, the three of you are going to make our official replies in due course, but can you spice us up with an entree, perhaps, of what is the main course to come later on in Parliament? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's a pleasure to be back with the panelists. The first issue that we had, and you probably saw that when I raised the point of order in Parliament, we still haven't got this budget estimate. It's probably going to come tomorrow or later tonight. But normally the practice is that the estimates are provided soon after the bill is introduced. And obviously the bill was introduced, the Parliament has been adjourned, we do not have the estimate. However, just a general comment about the budget announcement. As expected, it's really good politics rather than good policy. There's always this debate and governments before the election engage in or try and engage in good politics and offer things that would get them votes. And there are issues that the opposition parties have been raising. There are issues with respect to subsidies for sugarcane farmers. We have talked about the plight of sugarcane farmers in this country for a long time, and I think the government understood that. They knew that they were getting flexed, so they're trying to provide some assistance to the farmers. But we believe that the real issue with respect to income of farmers, as we have proposed, can only be achieved through a guaranteed minimum price of $100, which we will provide when we come into government. The other point that you need to understand, obviously there are increases in social welfare payments, support for disabled people, those are welcome initiatives that we would like to say that needed to be done. But the most fundamental thing that our people need to understand about this government over the last few years has been that they've been piling up debt. And when you pile up debt, somebody has to pay. And those somebody will be people today, we will be paying today, as well as the future generations. So you can see that the budget deficit is now 4.5% of GDP. And if you look at the bill, it says the government borrowing for 2017-2018 must not exceed the sum of 716 million. So government has already set a target that they could borrow up to $716 million. And the important thing to understand about that is the people will be paying some of those burden through other taxes. For example, in the last budget, the government put in a 9% VAT on basic food items. And the increase in the threshold, income threshold from 16 to 30,000 will help obviously people in that category. But people who were already below 16,000 and were reeling under high cost of living are not going to benefit, and there is not much that the government has come out to address the real issue, which is the cost of living. There are assistance in various ways that has been announced in the budget, but ultimately it's the cost of living that the people want it to come down, and that has not been addressed. Minimum wage, again, the argument that if you raise minimum wage, up to a living wage, you're going to lose jobs in the economy. That's not an argument that we buy. And there are experiences of countries where minimum wage has been raised to an equivalent of a living wage. And in fact, on the contrary, more jobs have been created in some instances rather than loss of jobs. So a minimum wage from $2.32 to $2.68 doesn't address the issue of living wage. So there are a lot of things. And one other thing that we're still concerned, in Head 50, which is the miscellaneous expenditure, the allocation is 468 million. That shows, poor budgeting process. I mean, if government is putting that huge amount of money into Head 51, it obviously hasn't done its work in terms of allocating appropriate amounts straight away. So those are my preliminary comments, Mr. Chairman, and I'm sure I'll be saying a lot more about this budget. But the long and short of everything is that this was an election budget. It is an election budget. It's a feel-good budget. It's about good politics. There are some aspects of allocation which we agree, which we support, which will help people. But when you look at the fundamentals of the budget, the long-term, medium-term aspect of what this budget is going to do, whether it's going to create jobs, whether it's going to create a situation where people will have decent wages, whether they will have a cost of living which is commensurate with what they can expect to have an appropriate living, these fundamentals have not been addressed.
Thank you, the leader. I want to give the mic back to Professor Naidu. I believe that given the comments that have come from the floor and the sentiments aired by the party leader, I think Lorraine has said that, I think she's been greatly surprised in certain areas. You've generally reserved your comments in terms, waiting to see, what are really the nuts and bolts on how they make these big numbers work. So But I know you would like to, to add a few more comments in the notes that you have.
Yeah, thank you very much, and welcome back, Professor Prasad. I'd like to express my support for what Mr. Atar Singh said on those issues regarding wages and job security. There is this slogan about buy Fiji made, but a very significant proportion of our population can't afford a lot of things that are made Fiji made because they just don't have the purchasing power. So, increasing the minimum wage from $2.32 to $2.68 an hour is not going to improve the lot of the people who are affected by this. So Atar said it, and Professor Prasad said the same thing. So I think here is an issue that requires confronting and airing, because at the end of the day, all this talk about empowerment of our people, empowerment of our youth, empowerment of our women has to do with the quality of life they enjoy. And if you're not paying them a decent wage, how do you expect them to enjoy their quality of life? It was said that, skilled workers are getting much more than that. For instance, electricians are fetching $12 an hour here in Fiji. But this is one of the factors that has led to the out-migration of skilled workers, because we are not only talking about a national market, we are talking about a regional and international market regarding the labor force. So, people are not going to hang around if you're not going to pay them what is a fair return for their labor and for their skills. So I want to dwell on the business of the Fijian market, small as it is. If you don't increase people's wages, then they can't afford things. So the purchasing power and the size of market for goods and services is not expanding. I just wanted to make another comment, Chair, if you allow me. There was all these remarkable initiatives regarding the PSV license, being able to get cheaper loan, affordable loan, being able to use it as a PSV permit as a collateral, etc., etc. The minister talked about the traffic problem. My guess is that with the initiative that they've put in place to provide better public service vehicles, the traffic problem will increase quite significantly rather than being ameliorated. Now, this is a matter for, observation, but, if you give people more incentives to buy more vehicles, whether they are PSV or private, the fact is that there'll be more vehicles on the road, and this will create added congestion. And of course, nowadays what you find is people spending long hours waiting in traffic, going to work, returning home, and this affects the productivity of people.
Thank you, Professor Chand. Very quickly, I'll pass the mic to Honorable Parmod Chand on perhaps a quick entree from your take of the budget, listening to it in Parliament.
Thank you, Chair. We sat and heard all around, and definitely what the leader has said is just a political budget. And we do appreciate some of the things that have been announced. However, what we really wanted is help coming to the people in a very direct form. Like it was very clearly said about the sugar industry, indirectly, few things have been put here and there, which will not really wake up the farmers to do farming. At the moment, what the farmers are saying is that the price of sugarcane is very, very low. not all the farmers are able to cultivate more farm and more land because there is also a problem of land tenure. Something should have happened about land tenure. The government should have, if you want to improve the sugar industry, build the sugar industry, all those expiring leases, and the people that have been displaced, you got to do something to get those leases renewed. And secondly, you got to do something to get the people back, attract them. But you cannot just tell them, you come, I will give you some subsidy on fertilizer, I will give you this, that, you know. People really want something in the pocket. If you want to do a business, you want to make money. Farming is like business. That is one area. Second area, I think I was telling Professor Biman, that one of the things he has clearly heard is the third party thing. I raised this in Parliament in regards to third party. When people are traveling in a vehicle and there is an accident, there is a claim. And it takes ages for somebody to come up with a decent claim. But thank God, they are able to listen to something. And I think from January 1st, there will be no more third party. It will be turned into a levy, which will accommodate for accident claims and all this. So that is something, a welcome move. However, as we see the budget, generally this budget is not going to filter down well. One more thought is this. If you increase the threshold to 30,000 and you don't even have 30,000 income, you don't even have a $20,000 income or a 10,000, what benefit does it make to the people out there? You know, that is a problem. So basically, we'll be preparing for the budget reply in the next 5 or 7 days, and you should be hearing us in Parliament. I think we will expect you to be beside your TV and hear us. But unfortunately, we have only 20 minutes each. There will be no more time. In the previous parliaments, we used to borrow time from some other people who don't use. In this one, you can't do anything, just like you saw the hiccup. When the bill is given to us, you need to have the estimates together with it. It was not given, but you know, when you are in complete control and you have too much power, you can dictate whatever you want. So this is the order of the day. That is what we must know. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member, Honourable Parmod Chand. I'll give the floor. I'll give the mic again to the floor to the audience tonight. Please raise your hand. I know there's someone out there that would like to perhaps ask a question. Thank you, Madam. Yes, now. Thank you.
I'm Faye from the National Council of Women, and I'm asking a question with reference to the budget allocation, and I'm hoping that the honourable members of Parliament from the National Federation Party will be able to raise it. For the women's budget, again, it seems like a rhetoric. My question is, why only a small drop in the ocean of the big national budget that we have? Only 1.6 million or 1 point something million for the Women's Plan of Action. How much of that money will trickle down to the women at the grassroots level, so that it's not just about their programs, but more so about what the women want? 500,000 for the Women's Expo. How many of the women that came for the expo actually sold their products? So I'm hoping that the government will allocate some money for markets, so that when the ships come in, there is somewhere for the women to sell the products that they so painstakingly do and go back with after the Women's Expo. The third question I'm hoping that will be addressed is the fact that as mothers, as grandmothers, the preschool education, there wasn't any allocation for the preschool teachers. There's been so much said about civil servants, but these are the hands that create the psyche of a child, and it's a very, very important component of the education system. So there needs to be budget allocation for that. I'm happy that there is some money for miscellaneous. I'm not an accountant, but I'm hoping that some of that can be taken out for the women and for the educational purposes of our young people. And the last question is, again, as a mother, as women who come in and worry about the future, who's going to pay for the budget? It seems so nice, so many sweets tonight. It's like Christmas. But after Christmas, there's always a drought. So my question is, who's going to pay for all this? For the young people who are being given so much, who will pay for all the money that is being allocated for their scholarships? It's a very good budget. It seems so beautiful, but my worry is, how are we going to pay for that? Vinaka. So those are just some of the issues I wanted to raise. Vinaka.
Thank you very much, Faye. I think our honourable members of parliament, including the leader, have heard that quite clearly, and unfortunately, the party through its representatives in parliament has only 60 minutes. I'm sure they have taken heed of the issues that you have raised, in addition to all the other issues that were raised here tonight, and we'll try inculcate that into into the responses that would be given when it is that time to comment on the budget. I want to give the mic now to Dr. Kumar. Your take on the comments that have already been listed, and perhaps issues that you had missed out initially. Very briefly, I know we've been here long, and I would like to also invite comments from Honorable Prem Singh before the night, and maybe from Lorraine, and also from Apenisa. So very briefly, Dr. Kumar.
Thank you, Chair, Leader of the party, members of Parliament, and friends, and ladies and gentlemen. I think the issue of the revenue side has been raised. The devil, I think, is really in the details on that side of the budget, and the minister very clearly, sidestepped it. He did not give any details. And Professor Naidu has said about him, he's a great speaker. I think he's a great actor, He is Shahrukh Khan of Fiji. Great. He came out well in terms of words and how to express things, but I guess the budget did not address many important issues. On the cost of living, he pushed the blame onto the businesses, and I thought he used the word bandit. Bandit, did he? And he harped on the instruments of FIRCA, Commerce Commission, and I guess he was driving the point that those who are avoiding taxes and so on would actually be taken to task. Well, that's fine. Tax avoidance is bad behavior. We need some level of policing, but also in an economy, those who are liable to pay tax should be willingly paying tax. So you should create that environment where that happens. In any economy, intervention is not good. But I see when you keep talking about FIRCA and Commerce Commission, it amounts to interventions, which means policing people, monitoring people and so on, businesses and so on, which could be a negative point. And very strangely this time around, the minister did not come out talking about infrastructure. He didn't mention much. Maybe this time around, infrastructure is not so important. Of course, there's a problem, and the problem is the election. And this government is good at throwing money at the problems, and it has done exactly that under this budget. It's good to see, social welfare, allocation increasing, which means the downtrodden, the poor, the disabled, and so on are being addressed, which makes sense. But it is yet to be seen how policies would be applied. I think the government needs to put in a lot of effort in those policies in terms of poverty alleviation and so sorry. In the housing, on the housing matter, I thought there was nothing said on these quota settlements about policies. How I meet a lot of people in the quota settlement. They keep talking about, what we call empowerment. It's about leases. It's about how these people who are staying there would be able to actually make gains from the properties that they own. They don't really own, but they need some kind of government policies that defines it. So they would say, if we get the policy, or we get the lease, and we would be able to do more development. At the moment, people find themselves harassed by authorities and the so-called authorities that are out there, who go and question people on what they're doing, how they're improving their houses and so on. So that is an important one for us as a political party. There are huge portion of our people live in squatter settlements. Education budget seems fine, but what the younger people are getting through allowances, I think that is something we need to be cautious about. I have said that. About productivity gains, the minister has talked about many things, but how exactly productivity gains would come around through policy, that has not been expressed. So we would like to talk about that as well. Probably many more issues would arise, which we would want to talk about as we come closer to the debate. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kumar. We're coming now into the final phase of our panel tonight. I would like to invite, final comments. Initially to Honorable Prem Singh as Member of Parliament, and then I'll ask Lorraine again, and also and Apenisa for their final comments. Very briefly, before finally giving the mic to the leader to sum up tonight in terms of what we're doing and the message he wants to get across. So, Honorable Prem Singh.
Thank you, Chair. Like my other colleagues, I also say that this is an election budget, and it didn't come as a surprise to me because the way the consultations were being handled. And the couple issues that I'd like to raise. One is the sugar industry. We welcome the subsidies, further subsidies on fertilizers, regulating harvesting rates. But then I was looking at a package in sugar industry. You don't only harvest, can you also deliver them? So once you regulate the harvesting rates and not address the delivery, that does not make it a whole package. Coupled with this, on the other side, the income side, the farmers, as rightly pointed out by Honorable Chand, that the minimum guaranteed price of $100 or anything that would have become a package for sugar industry. On FNPF and the pension savings bill, I was looking at the pension savings bill that is before it's with the Solicitor General's office. That is basically to demonopolize, because now legislatively FNPF is the only pension institute. So if we had done that, that would have catered for a lot of our people who have withdrawn twice from FNPF. The third one is, as alluded to by Dr. Kumar, the revenue side. And the only thing I can get from this budget is that they would continue with very stringent compliance, and big businesses are targeted. So this is where the compliance side will not be, I think it will not be a good policy. On poverty, there was no real determination of how we take people out from poverty. What the stimulus package that the minister talked about that is in place, the subsidized bus fare, the school fees, and so on, they basically cushion the people who live within poverty. And this is mostly within the squatter settlements and others. So there's no real effort to get people out of poverty. You give them more, the allowances have been increased from $50 to $58, food voucher has been increased. So but they remain in poverty. There's no real effort been made by this budget to get them out of poverty. And the other one is on the resource owners. I find apart from the $10 million for landowners to develop their land, they have not. This budget is not addressing. They've made no effort to address the mahogany, the pine, and basically the resources that are that we have had. But for mahogany, the sustainable mahogany industry, FIJI hardwoods, they've continued to have problems, and this is where landowners could have maximized profit. So I couldn't see any policy announcement there today. Thank you, Chair, for giving me time. And these are my preliminary observations. And once we get the budget estimate, I'm sure we'll do a very good reply to the budget.
But of course, thank you. Lorraine?
To conclude quickly, for us women, we should be happy with the increase in the Ministry of Women budget, but it doesn't necessarily cover all our issues. We make up almost 50% of the population, so we're expecting the other budgets in the various ministries, for example, the scholarships for the young people, at least 50% to go to females as well too. So big hip hip hooray to the Minister for Finance for increasing the Ministry for Women budget, but also we're expecting an equal share amongst all the ministries' budget as well too. So thank you.
Thank you again. Getting a degree doesn't mean that you will get a job straight after you get a degree. And when you do get a job, you're slapped with a loan on top of your head after that. So that's something that we need to think about. And again, to answer Ms. Volatambu's question, who will pay for the debt? I will pay for it, you will pay for it. And at this very moment, generations who are still yet unborn will pay for it as well. And thirdly, on the question of the small business grant, it is interesting to note that the Minister mentioned that it is a highly successful program. Now the question remains, successful for whom? Ministry of Women Poverty Alleviation, is it successful because many people are applying for it, or is it successful because many people's lives are changed by it? Thank you. Food for thought.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I take this time now to re-invite the leader for his final comment and concluding remarks for tonight's session before I round off the session for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. One other thing about this government's budget, so at least over the last 3 years and since 2014, has been a lot of announcements. But if you look at the record on implementation, I mean, before 2014, we had a lot of announcements. Even in the last 2 budgets, we had announcements. Remember Waila City, remember asset sales, and sometimes it's not necessary that when an allocation is announced, that it actually happens. So the record of this government's implementation program, in my view, has been very poor. If you look at the allocation to Fiji Roads Authority over the last 2 or 3 years, and again, you know, we have more than $500 million allocation in the 2017-18 budget. Much of this expenditure is, in my view, reckless spending. And I think this budget is another example of reckless spending, in terms of various allocations. You talk to anybody today with respect to the quality of roads. The way in which FRA has been implementing some of those programs to build roads is very, very questionable. The CEO just resigned without any explanation why. So there are a lot of questions about implementation. So you may have heard a lot of good announcements, a lot of plans and proposals, but we need to look at the record of this government over the last 3 or 4 years against the announcements and what has actually been implemented, and we will be looking at that very, very closely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Ladies and gentlemen, those of you still with us from our session as it began around about 7:30 earlier on tonight, I think we're just reaching 10:30 our time in Fiji, and for those of you that are following us from abroad. And it's been 3 hours of listening, and 3 hours, out of that 3 hours, 2 hours has been listening to money being thrown at problems. And in it, that has been the case of government expenditure sorting out problems by throwing money at it. And I know, we all know that over the next 2 weeks, the National Federation Party will be, in a more deliberate manner, be replying to the budget as it's being read out tonight. I think you've had a preview from our members of Parliament, particularly by the Leader and the Honourable Prem Singh and Honourable Chand, and from our panelists here tonight, giving their thoughts and ideas about what was good and bad about the budget. But I just want to make a comment here because, and this is really following on from Dr. Kumar's comment, that what is quite evident from tonight's budget is the issue of extra enforcement of compliance. The spirit of creating the environment for willingness and for people to act responsibly actually is being doubted. I think there has been an emphasis entirely on a perception of a culture of dishonesty, which I do not believe is the spirit of our country and our people. But this is the general reflection that has come out of it, that for this budget to work, it needs to crack down on people that actually need to pay the money for it. But I hate to end this panel discussion on that particular note, but I sort of just got that impression that seems to be coming out, money being thrown, and hopefully to solve the problem, and that making sure you add additional enforcement processes to ensure compliance. I want to thank at this stage our panelists for tonight, particularly from the pre-budget session. I want to acknowledge again Professor Vijay Naidu. Thank you so much for valuing your time. Ms. Lorraine Foster, thank you for being here again, here tonight with us. Apenisa, our ever vibrant, inspirational youth rep. I know that you're not very, very perhaps optimistic about your opportunities and having to pay off the debt. But I'm sure, like you said in Lautoka, we are responsible for today in terms of the adults. You are tomorrow. So we want to thank you for your comments here tonight. I want to thank Dr. Sunil Kumar. Thank you for joining us on this occasion and for your comments. And in a special way, I want to thank the Leader, Honorable Prasad, and also Honorable Prem Singh and Honorable Parmod Chand for rushing up from Parliament to join us on this occasion. And we want to thank you, our audience in the House tonight, and want to thank you, our audience listening to us tonight in Fiji and abroad. And we want to assure you that, that the National Federation Party will make sure that the budget the announcement that has been made that government gets to account for every cent and all the processes that they have promised here today, that NFP is going to hold them accountable, wherever they go, particularly when this is being an election year and election budget. So with those comments, I thank you very much for listening to us tonight, and I wish you well and good speed. Thank you.